Attention small business owners. Are you looking to amplify your reach and get your business in front of more customers? Deep Dive Games has an exciting opportunity for you. We're currently seeking local businesses in the St. Mary's, Georgia and Athens, Ohio areas to advertise on our 2 weekly podcasts. With 6 ad spaces available, you can showcase your brand to our engaged listeners and drive traffic to your business. Choose to pay per ad or save big by securing a year's worth of advertising in advance, locked in at the current rate. Ready to take the next step in promoting your business? Don't miss out. Contact us today at 912-439-3940 or shoot us an email at deepdivegamesllc@gmail.com. Let's work together to get the word out and grow your business. This episode is brought to you by CM Design and Gifts. CM Design and Gifts is Camden County's premier destination for everything including embroidery, laser engraving, direct-to-film printing, trophies, signs, banners, and more. Locally owned and operated by a Marine Corps veteran and his family, the store is conveniently located behind the Brown Bag Liquor Store in Kingsland, Georgia. No job is too small or too large for this thriving company, eager to support our military community and residents. Contact them at info@cmdgifts.com or visit their website at www.cmdgifts.com. This episode is brought to you by Game Over Video Games and More in Kingsland, Georgia. Are you looking for video games, classic consoles, or a fresh collection of new releases? Game Over Video Games and More in Kingsland, Georgia has it all. Whether you're a modern gamer or just want to relive your gaming nostalgia, they've got an impressive selection, great deals, and a friendly staff ready to help. Stop by and level up at Game Over Video Games and More. This episode is brought to you by Alien Treats. Ever wondered what it's like to have a milkshake that's out of this world? Welcome to Alien Treats, Kingsland's one-of-a-kind alien-themed ice cream and candy shop. Whether you're craving a cosmic milkshake, want to cruise our huge selection of freeze-dried candy, or just chill in their free arcade, they've got something for the whole family. Have a birthday party or event coming up? They have a new party room you can rent by the hour that's perfect to make every special occasion memorable. So, if you're looking for a fun, family-friendly experience that's anything but ordinary, beam yourselves over to Alien Treats in Kingsland, Georgia. Follow them on Facebook for the latest specials and events, and remember, at Alien Treats, every bite is an adventure. Alien Treats, where our treats are out of this world.
All right. Welcome to episode, what is it, episode 4?
4.
4? Yeah, we're on 4. Hey, guys, congrats. My name is Tyler. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined, as always, by Nick the Red.
What's up, guys?
And we actually have a special guest. Episode 4 is going to be a big one and not just completing a month of recording stuff. We have Iggy joining us today.
What's up, Deep Dive Nation? How we feeling?
So we brought Iggy on because we're going to be talking a little bit about the new Lorcana set. What is it? Arcasia's Island, I think.
Yeah, Arcasia's Island, which is introducing a new original character to the world, Arcasia, who's some kind of strange owl demigod creature who has an island of pets, ? It seems like it's a pet themed thing.
Yeah, I've noticed with like a lot of like the key art that they've released so far, they've shown like Bolt and a few other like the animal characters.
Yeah. There's a lot of new puppy support and things, which we'll get into.
Okay, yeah, and if I remember correctly, this is the first like original character that's shown up as a more prominent figure in the set, because I know if you watch like the trailers and stuff and there's special animations that they make, that there's like this whole separate lore to Lorcana of like these unique like the Illuminator characters and everything, but they're not really represented in the cards or anything like that.
Not entirely. Yeah, there are some cards that are original to Lorcana, like the Chromacons, the different spheres, and now there are the coils, one in each set, which specifically feature the characters that are unique to Lorcana, which they finally have names. As far as I could tell, we had not actually gotten their names yet. It's Martin. I don't remember the other two.
So we got Martin. Okay,
it's like Martin Forte or something, and then like Zaya, I want to say. They're releasing this time around as their art cards. They're releasing little snippets of like actual lore and story.
Okay.
Which they used to do alongside the troves, and they kind of stopped for a while. Which, I'm all for it. I'm very curious what their deal is. They're not very clear about it.
Yeah, well, because and I think it's interesting because Lorcana, when it first came out, it was just like, hey, Disney card game, and everyone's like, what does Disney card game mean? And I think that Ravenburgers are doing like a really interesting thing by just letting it be its own thing, and it's not just, hey guys, you're gonna get Mickey Mouse cards every set, you're gonna get Donald, you're gonna get X, Y, and Z characters. It's like, hey, we're actually trying to do a little bit of something different. It's gonna have its own flavor, its own lore, its own universe to play around with, beyond just like, what if Aladdin was evil?
Well, so, not exactly, too, because, like, we're saying it would be interesting if they released, like, an Aladdin card that's a villain, or, like, a Jafar card that's a hero, which Disney is still not quite letting them do that. Which I think is, like, a missed opportunity, but they still have to, bow to the mouse.
They'll get there, yeah.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
I noticed, like, when the game first came out, the first set and whatnot, we were looking at a lot of the cards that came out and whatnot. I definitely bought a box of the first set. Me and my daughter sat down and played the game for a bit. What I've noticed is a lot of the characters they were pulling from were from that friggin' mobile game they had for a while, Disney Mirrorverse. So a lot of the art, a lot of the characters, a lot of the different styles, the terms, Floodborn, Inkborn, Storyborn, whatever, all seem to have come from that. So is that like, and I know I just looking it up, while you guys were talking about it, like apparently it got shut down December 14th or 16th of 2024.
Really?
Yeah, it lasted a lot longer than I expected it to. I had seen promotion for that. I was vaguely interested. The gameplay was what, like a MOBA?
It was a mobile. Well, no, it wasn't a MOBA. It was you had a party of characters. It kind of reminded me of the Star Wars game where you make a team of Star Wars characters and whatnot. It was like that, where you could have 3 characters, you could power them up. It was definitely a gacha game.
Yeah.
So you would power them up and evolve them over time, and they would get stronger. But they would basically fight against these Mirrorborn or Mirrorverse versions of their villains and even some of the heroes. So like the Scar we got in the first set, right? The Scar that was like all fiery and whatnot.
Yeah.
That came from Mirrorverse. Same thing with the Bell, where the Bell looks like a warrior or whatever.
Right.
That came from Mirrorverse.
I never knew that. I thought those were all just completely original designs.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. I'm surprised Mirrorverse didn't do better, considering like this did pretty well.
Yeah.
And this is like, similarly, TCGs are gacha in their own way.
It's old school gacha.
I mean, apparently it did well enough, like better than people expected, but it didn't last very long, because I sort of remember when it came out, but even just looking at the wiki, like it started in 2022 and was over by 2024.
Oh wow, so it was short lived.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me think of all those like old Kingdom Hearts mobile games that they've released a million times over, where it lives just long enough to tell the story, and they're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Well, and it was the same company, Kabam, that made the Marvel Contest of Champions and Star Wars Uprising.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, I was reminded recently of Disney Infinity, which was another not quite as short lived, but still definitely like long gone thing that they did that was its own kind of original thing, and it had a lot more crossover things happening.
It was definitely cashing in on the whole like collectible figurine craze during the mid second
2010s.
Yeah,
I want to say
mid 2010s.
Because I remember like Skylanders was the first big ones.
That was the one they were trying to cash in the popularity of that that IP.
God rest my homie Spyro. He got eaten up by that. But
I mean, that's the thing is I totally understand why that was a craze, because as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is a Walmart killer right here, boy.
Oh yeah, because it's toys.
It's toys. It's figurines.
And
it's
video
collectible
games?
figurines that you can then. Dude, I had it. Me and my daughter played those a bunch. My ex-wife and I got into it for a little bit, and we were like collecting all the figures and the totems and the things you could plug into the device and whatnot.
Because I remember, because it was also the other big one was the Nintendo Amiibos,
which is the only one that's still around.
Right.
Like they still make those, but it's like most people only get them for the figure. We have a million of them, and I think the only time we ever like get them out is like for Animal Crossing, so that you can get a particular villager. Or I think we got the N64 like Ocarina of Time Link, because that lets you get Epona in Breath of the Wild. So
I forgot they did that.
But like otherwise,
I know in Smash they have a pretty big
utility,
if you have the AIs.
You could build the AI up, you can train the little figures and whatnot.
Yeah, and I thought that was always pretty neat. That's what I remember the most, but also I have owned like 3 Switches and sold all of them because I will buy a Switch, play whatever new game made me rebuy a Switch, and then get rid of it because I'm like, cool, I don't play Nintendo first-party games enough. So I'm just like, whatever.
I did the same thing with the Xbox. I did the same thing with the PlayStation.
I mean, that's the thing is I bought a Switch at launch. It came out on my birthday back in 2017. So 8 years ago next week, actually.
That's
it was March
crazy.
3rd. And I played it a lot at the beginning, but I don't think I've really touched the thing aside from like, you know, Mario Party or Mario Kart with friends in like years.
Cool. So, yeah, what were we just talking about?
We were going off for the most part about Lorcana and Disney adjacent properties.
Disney properties. and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, and also talking about, we got onto Nintendo and Amiibos and all of that.
Yeah.
I still think that stuff's neat.
It's interesting, yeah. I was there. I was working in a Nintendo warehouse when they did the launch of the Amiibo.
That's crazy, actually.
It interests me just like because I worked there for the launch of the Amiibo, and I worked at a different warehouse for the launch of the Wii U, and the stark contrast in how those launches went is like so apparent from the back end.
Well, yeah, you know, the Wii U, you had to ship out a total of like 5 units to people.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of anyone. I've never met a single person in real life that owns a Wii U.
I knew a couple of people back in the day, and honestly, the reason why a lot of people don't own them now is because the Wii U was kind of just an experiment. It was a very limited run product between the Wii and the Switch, and they were developing the Switch while the Wii U was out, and it wasn't backwards compatible.
Yeah,
You had a bunch of proprietary games that only worked on the Wii U. And then when the Switch launched, the Wii U's were so rare that I remember GameStop doing a promotion where if you traded in a Wii U, it was like worth $300
that's insane.
because of just how rare they were. You could get $300 towards buying the Switch.
Yeah, I always wanted a Wii U because I thought it was such an interesting idea. The idea of there being one central screen and then a separate smaller screen.
Right,
The
like a
closest
tablet.
thing that Nintendo did to that was on the GameCube when they had the GBA, where you could connect
The
your
connector. You could
connect
GBAs,
the
and so everybody
GBA.
has their own screen. The closest thing now we have is like Jackbox, where it's like the big screen and then everybody has
Yeah,
their phone.
use your phone to do stuff.
So there's some games that there's an interesting design space to that concept that I would love to see explore more.
Yeah, and I think the Wii U's biggest issue was it felt like there weren't very many games that fully took advantage of that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of games where the only thing that screen did is it would just be like a mini map that was always open.
Or an inventory screen.
Yeah, and it's like cool, but there is a lot of design because I think about like the Nintendo DS.
I was going to
how
say
it had
the
the
DS
two screens.
is like that too.
The DS I feel like utilized it a little bit more, but also that's because they had a touch screen on the bottom, so you could do a lot more with that
Yeah.
than just a static screen.
Yeah, it also made some of their ports really good. Like I always recommend the Ocarina of Time port on DS because it made the water temple so much more bearable.
Yes.
Because you didn't have to pause, go through all these long animation transitions to check the map, change your boots. It's like there's just a toggle for your boots
Yep,
right
just click
there. The map's always there. So it's like when I played it, I was like, this isn't that awful. Everybody complained about the water temple for years. Then I went back and played it on the actual N64. I'm like, oh, that's
I see.
Sucks.
Yeah, they-
this sucks.
these fancy like menu transitions are like pretty for a few minutes and then they're just so
They become
annoying
grating. It's
after
like
a couple hours.
that's like I remember, and I swear we will talk about Lorcana, but we're on this tangent now, and I have to get this out. A game that I will never forget that I enjoyed a lot, but has just aged, I don't feel like very well. Fable 3.
Fable 3.
Fable 3. So they made a really big deal with that game. You know,
Yep.
Peter Molyneux got up on stage and he went, guys, I have an idea.
I have an idea.
And he was like, because you know, that man could sell anything, and he always pitched the craziest thing. I'll
He
never
was
forget.
the king
I mean-
of I have an idea.
Yes, he was like, I have this
It was
idea.
Lion's Head, right?
Yeah, Lionshead Studios
Yeah.
before it went under.
Black and white. Love that game.
Yep, black
Oh
and
my
white
God,
OG
they've been
Fable.
saying that they announced a black and white 2 like almost a decade ago. I don't
There
know
is
if
a
they're
black
still
and white
working.
too.
Did they actually release it?
Yeah, it was released a long time ago.
Wow.
But Fable 3, the big pitch was no menus anywhere in the game. There's
Yeah.
no menuing because they were like, we know that was a complaint with Fable 2 is that you spent the majority of the game digging through
was-
your inventory
yeah.
and your menus and setting up spells and this, that.
Yep.
But they were like, when you hit pause, you just get teleported to this other room where you can equip weapons, you can set your
You
spell.
go back
this
to the
was the-
sanctuary.
This was the Mind
butler.
Palace game.
Yep. And it was like, wow, this is really cool. Do you know how
And it was John
frustrating it is?
Cleese who was the butler.
Yes, it was John Cleese as the
yeah.
butler. But it is so cool at first. You're like, wow, I'm always playing the game. And eventually you're like, oh my God, dude, just let me, I could do this way faster.
Right.
Well,
I
yeah,
would
in a
rather just have a menu, damn it.
Now it's like 4 loading screens.
That's an issue now with the metaverse where it's like trying to do the same thing of just like it's like, oh, you have a shop that you can actually run around virtually, and within minutes you realize like, oh, this is why everything's text. It's so much easier and so much more efficient to just have like a big list of just like picture words rather than having to run around an actual physical store. That's
Yeah.
why everybody shops online now, and if they go to what the metaverse wants, it's like you're kind of just taking steps backwards and making it even more difficult because you have to use a
you
controller to
maneuver this whole
maneuver it.
space and like, oh, I have to go to the virtual aisle to go buy my cereal.
Yeah,
I'd rather just dig through a list.
There's no need for it's like it's fun in concept, but in actual practicality, it's a very bad idea.
Yeah, but
You know what that feels like? That
What?
feels like watching somebody else playing a video game.
yeah,
Yes.
like, dude, I can't wait for the day. Like, if they really try to kick this off, we're gonna get like Walmart speed run, and you're gonna have someone backseating you. They'll be like, you were so suboptimal getting the instant ramen. Like, there is a skip you can do where you clip through 3 aisles and you grab everything.
Yeah,
And that would be insane.
oh my god, the glitches for metaverse are going to be insane. That's is stuff. I don't know if you've poked around in it. It's so janky.
The buying underage alcohol skip, any percent. But anyways,
Anyways. Oh, look, a segue.
a segue. Lorcana.
So Set 7 is coming out just in a couple weeks. March 7th for hobby stores, a couple weeks later for mass release.
Yes, because
Yeah.
they've really been pushing that a lot more. I feel like I don't know if they slipped on it or they just quit mentioning it as much, like around like Set 3, Set 4.
Yeah.
Because that's when they finally got their distribution under control. So it felt like it really felt like I was seeing the product show up almost maybe not same day, but like a week later at like Target, Walmart, your big box stores.
Mhm.
But I've noticed like even when we were just ordering our stuff for this set, they make a big deal. They're like hobby store, brick and mortar restricted. This is the release date for your LGSs. This is the release date for everyone else. So I think
Honestly,
that's a pretty cool
that
thing.
is definitely one thing about Ravensburger that I think they are doing right. Because like I said, I'm not a big player of that of Lorcana.
Yeah.
But I honestly and genuinely wish that other companies would commit to that stance, that idea that we want to support LGSs, we want to support brick and mortar stores, because I mean, look at what's happening with Pokemon right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal with
The
Pokemon.
fact that like you have these drop shippers or you have these scalpers that are literally creating fake storefronts so they can open up distributor accounts, buy at the distributor prices, buy out so many of these distributors of their product, and then your LGSs are just left holding the bag.
Yeah, and I mean, it's rough.
It's a real shame.
I've had to tell kids, like, kids come in here all the time trying to buy Pokemon, and I feel bad that when I have to look at them and say, hey, kid, I'm sorry, you're competing with someone that's like got 30 plus years on you.
And a
they have a
disposable
bank
income.
account. Yeah, they have a bank account in a car. Like, I'm sorry, man, you're just at a major disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame, and I do like that Ravensburger is way more on top of it, especially they're changing it up now, which you guys have mentioned on the podcast previously. With Set 8, they're going to be going into the Ravensburger Play Network, the RPN, where pre-release will be only 1 week ahead, but will include things like Pack Rush, which we did this last weekend here.
It seemed
at
like
the
a lot of
store.
fun.
It was a ton of fun, because it's like you get the couple packs, you get to play with them, so it's like you're having to play in a different weird way, which was always one of my favorite events at the store is when we do starter deck challenges where everybody just gets a starter deck and plays them, and it forces you to play with cards you probably would never put in a deck, but it gives you a better appreciation for how the game functions, and like how the different matchups work with each other.
Yeah, it's similar. It puts you on the same playing play space and head space as like when you draft in any sort of like limited format, where you start looking at cards very differently. Because I can talk about this from a Magic perspective, at least. When you're drafting Magic, there are some commons that you would just completely like breeze over when you're building like a commander, a standard, a modern deck. But man, you're drafting and you go,
a 4-drop 3/3 with flying? That's amazing.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god! I was about to say a 4/2 flyer for like 5. It's not unplayable.
Yeah.
It's a decent top end with evasion.
You know what I miss though? I miss the old sealed format for Magic, where they released the sealed decks. I think it was like intermediate or expert level product. You remember those?
Yeah, where it had the little symbol,
on it, and it was like you had. I think it came with like 20 lands, 20 basic lands in the back of it, and then it was just a random assortment of like 60 cards. You got that. You got like 2 or 3 packs, and then you just had to build a cohesive deck out of the junk that you got. It came with like 3 rares. It was like 3 rares and X number of uncommons, and then the rest of it was just random commons and whatnot in the set. And then that was the sealed thing. You bought that specifically to play in a sealed event. You'd buy that, you'd get your couple of packs, you'd pay like $30. You'd sit down and you'd build a deck out of what you open.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
That would be so much fun.
Do that again.
Yeah, one of the things we've talked about doing for this release, it was Jerry's idea. Jerry is one of our locals here in the Lorcana community. Basically, when we all get a box or more when the set releases, just basically doing sealed with our entire box.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting. We'll see how that goes, because we're definitely planning on doing that. You know, we'll have to figure out the details, obviously, with y'all, but we'd be doing it here.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is we love hosting just random events. Like I always tell people, and Braden, the owner, he always talks about it. If people want to do an event, like you just want to host something randomly, give us the details. Tell us what you need from us, whether it's just putting it up in Melee, or eventually it'll be RPN or on Event Link or whatever for whatever game. And, you know, if it's something that you have to buy product from us, let us know. We'll set it up though. We'll host. You know, we are a play space. We're a tournament space. If people want to do stuff, just communicate it with us, you know, give us the ample amount of time to do it. And we make things happen normally, like we always try to.
Yeah, we coordinated things even recently, the community, to get this Win an Enchanted tournament set up that's coming up, I believe, this next weekend.
Yes, the 1st of March. We're really excited about that. We just put details about that out on social media with the Enchanteds that we'll be using for it.
Do we figure out which one it is?
Yes, it'll be the I want to say it's the Anna, and there is, I think it's the Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge is second.
Scrooge is for second place because it's just slightly below in value. As well as
actually try and get in this game, because I actually really like Scrooge.
It's a really cool card. I know we have it somewhere.
I just like the character.
It's one of the better ones from that set, because they drew it as if it's like a painted portrait.
Oh, so like the portraits of him in his mansion.
I like with the Enchanteds, because initially with the Enchanteds, you know, it was just basically like an extended art of a card, or like slightly alternate art with just a really cool foiling pattern. But now I think it's since like, I think set 3 is when they really started to change up the look of Enchanteds.
And it was like an alternate.
They made them very like specific to the set.
Yeah, each set, it really depends, right? Because set 3 is kind of known as being like decent. Set 4 ended up being really disappointing, because it was just kind of a lot of just ethereal character in a black space.
Yeah.
But then set 5, they're all just super gorgeous, incredibly colorful, because that was like the party set. It was supposed to be like a big celebration. But with this new set coming out, they're going somewhere kind of half between. It's like kind of a very cartoony picture book, but super colorful thing. Sort of like 5, but like a little more flat. So the specific details for the Win an Enchanted tournament, it's first place, one on a True-Hearted Enchanted. Second place, a Scrooge McDuck, Richest Duck in the World Enchanted. Third place is a Lorcana Illumineer's Quest Deep Trouble set, which is a great product because it comes with 2 fully playable decks, and they are better decks than your starter decks.
Yep.
They have some legendaries in there, whereas the starter decks usually have nothing better than a rare. Fourth place is a Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie playmat, which was a set 1 playmat, and fifth place is a Winnie the Pooh Honey Wizard playmat, which was set 2.
Yeah, I was really surprised when those showed up. when we just got in a shipment. Because I was
Yeah.
like, what in the world?
They just randomly have been popping up again. I feel like they just found them in somewhere in a back corner in a warehouse or something. But
It's always what they say, right? Oh, we just happened to find this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes out. Like, I think Magic did that. I forget what set it was. Was it Dominaria, I think? They're like, oh, we happened to find these old Legends cards.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
set 3 when they
Sure,
did the
Wizards,
first
we believe you.
set championships, that was the thing they did, is that they had held back some of the set 1 boxes to release to stores doing set championships.
Yes, I remember that when we hosted our first one. That was probably some of the most fun hosting like a big event has
It's
been
so
because it
hype.
was a first time for a new game.
Mm-hmm.
They released old product, so for people that didn't get the chance because like you said, you remember getting into Lorcana when it 1st came out. It was impossible to get a hold of anything.
And the boxes were super expensive when they first came out.
They were really expensive.
I remember $235 for a box of 24 packs of 12 cards per pack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they definitely had their growing pains, and that's because up to this point, I don't think Ravensburger has ever done a TCG. They've done a lot of board games and puzzles.
Mostly puzzles and board games. I would have to check if they'd ever taken a crack at a TCG, but certainly this is their first time taking a crack at a TCG with a big license.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I remember
because they already work with Disney a lot.
Yes.
They're Disney, and for puzzles and
I
for
was gonna
board
say
games.
for like merchandise.
because
For
they
Yeah.
also
specific
make Disney
ones.
Villainous.
I was about to say
Yep,
Villainous. I've played
Villainous.
that. That is a really fun board game.
Very
Like,
I
fun.
really had a chance to.
It's interesting.
TCG adjacent, I would
Yeah.
say.
Mm-hmm.
It's less complicated. There's no like deck building. It's all pre-constructed. But
it's like
everybody-
a living card game where it's like self-contained stuff. You just buy the expansions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fun. They did the Oogie Boogie set recently, which I like a lot. It comes with the actual like dice that he has in the movie.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
That's neat. Villainous is a super fun game.
Yeah.
I'm always into games like that. Like I was talking with Iggy on the way here. I really liked playing the Arkham Horror games with everybody.
Yeah.
Because those were a lot of fun. I like those cooperative, like team versus game kind of games. I like a lot of the. I mean, and I understand that like, Villainous is a little bit more competitive, but like I like games that are like that, the long form games where you have recognizable characters and things like that. Because I heard there was a Star Wars one too.
Yes, they did do Star Wars ones. I think it's what Kylo was the big character for one of them.
Maybe. I'm not familiar.
It was Kylo or Darth Vader. Obviously, it's going to be a dark side character because Villainous. We're focused on villains.
Oh, a Villainous, we're saying. Yeah,
Yes.
the thing with Villainous is basically everybody is playing a different villain. You have a specific deck, and you can really only interact with each other by basically using one of the abilities to draw cards from their hero deck and put out hero characters to like slow them down.
There's one of those games where like you have a villainous deck, you have a hero deck, and then other people can manipulate your hero deck to kind of slow you down from winning.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
That
then
makes-
it's like, you're just everybody has a very different goal that they're trying to get to, which means that it's pretty unbalanced. There are some characters like Prince John in the base set that he's just crazy easy to play because it's super simple. You just have to get a ton of money, which is not hard to do. Whereas there's other ones like Jafar where it's like you have to do all sorts of, you have to like take control of Genie and then get the lamp and then and it's like there's just so many steps.
Yeah.
Where
of all
it's fun,
things,
but
it talking about it and like explaining it just randomly reminded me. It almost makes you think of Gloom of all games, where
it's similar, yeah.
it's that twist on what you're doing. Because for anyone that hasn't played Gloom before, super fun. It's strictly card based.
How are you?
And the whole concept of the game is you are trying to be as miserable as possible.
Yeah.
And the way your opponents disrupt your stuff is they make good things happen to you.
Which is fascinating because it's like in the end you're just making numbers go in two different directions.
Right.
And it's not mechanically different than if you were trying to get the highest score and they were trying to give you negatives, but because they've flipped it around, it just psychologically changes it
It
that
makes
tiny
it more
amount.
interesting.
And it makes your brain think of it in a very
Yeah,
different way.
as well as the flavor of it all.
That reminds me of an old game, an old card game that was like one of those like self-contained card games. It was called Gother Than Thou. And it literally was you and like three other people were sitting around the table and you're playing, you have to accumulate a certain number of points. and you have your little goth guy, and it's always some overblown friggin' like caricature of like a goth person, and you were playing things like overly large ankh and black trench coat and things like that. And then
Nice.
to stop your opponents, you were playing things like sundress or bunny or something like that, where it like gave you negative points on your thing.
This sounds like a card game that would show up in an episode of South Park.
True.
Like I could really see that.
The goth kids.
Yeah, it was the
versus
goth kids.
versus
Yeah.
the scene kids.
Peak episode. But so with Arcasia's Island.
Yes.
Oh, look, a segue.
Not really much of one.
Not one. No, I like to run into brick walls when I'm talking about stuff. That's how my brain works. But so Arcasia's Island, we're getting all the pets, which means I know I've seen, like I said before, Bolt. You said there's puppy support.
Yeah.
Which it feels so weird, and I'm sure anyone that doesn't play Lorcana, it sounds so weird to say things like that.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Yeah, the one, my friend Sydney, who's in the Lorcana community, has always said that you end up saying some of the funniest things. One of her favorites being, I'm going to fire the cannons at Lilo.
Screw that kid in particular.
That one in particular.
You haven't lived until you've been in Georgia at a Lorcana event and overheard somebody with a thick Southern accent going, I'm going to tap my dangle hopper.
I'm gonna tap my dingle hopper.
That sounds inappropriate.
I'm trying to think of some others. Oh, the joke I always used to use when the game was coming out. I always said, I'm waiting for them to release Mono Green Goofy with Trample.
Yeah.
They need to reproduce that card. He's a 3/3 with Trample.
Mm-hmm.
That's always just been my joke because of how Magic is.
Mm-hmm.
And it just always feels weird to me. Because Lorcana, again, it's a fun game. I've played it, I need to throw a deck together eventually, but I always will sit there and be like, there's some mental disconnect I will always have because of the things you'll say just casually playing. I'm like, yeah, anyway, so I play Goofy and I'm swinging into your Minnie Mouse.
I know.
Goofy in attack mode.
Right? Like I play, so that's why I'm always like, Mono Green Goofy with Trample.
I'm gonna hit you with a yucks.
Yeah, like in my deck, one of the core cards I play is Hiram Flaversham, who's from The Great Mouse Detective, which
love
is
that
my
movie so
favorite
much.
movie. Yeah, my favorite Disney movie. But like, there's so many people I play against who like they know the card because it's very big in the meta, but nobody knows who this guy is because he's like a side character
Ms.
in like
Hanger.
a like at a point when Disney was like really kind of down the tubes. This was like right before they came back with the
Right.
Renaissance. So,
Was it right before that or right
It
right
was
around
like-
the
it
same
was kind of
time?
the
It was like
tipping
the
point.
upper
'cause it was like
portion.
Black Cauldron, Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Like that was the Xerox era where they literally like you can see guidelines on some of their faces in
Yes.
some shots
Yep.
because they were just like cutting corners left and right.
Well, as, right around because I actually just watched like a mini documentary on Don Bluth, and he was the one of the reasons why Disney had to change their art style, had to change it because him and several other Disney animators left and created their own studio, and they were putting out bangers like like American Tail,
Yeah.
The
Classic.
Secret of Nim, The Secret of Nim being the first one that they did, and then like All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Didn't they
Yeah.
do
So-
Anastasia?
Yes, Anastasia
Yes.
was
I
a
remember
Don
watching
Bluth
that as a
movie,
kid.
and
So
it was like
Fox released.
Yes.
but it forced Disney to revisit like how they did everything. And I think the one that came out right after that as an answer to the Don Bluth like uprising was Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I think we started seeing that slow incline back of quality Disney movies, quality Disney classics. And I'm pretty sure Great Mouse Detective was like right there.
Yeah,
at the
it's
cusp of it.
basically there was the dark age of Disney. They had very little money. They were still
Mm-hmm.
trying to find their feet after Walt had died in the late 60s. And you got things like the Aristocrats or the Aristocats. You got things like like the Black Cauldron, which I think is still pretty good, but
I thought it was a great movie.
the unfortunate thing is that there was a lot of studio meddling. That was the first movie that they were working on when Jeffrey Katzenberg came in.
Yep.
He did
I've
not
seen a
understand
little
it at
documentary
all.
about this.
Right.
But then, Great Mouse Detective was Musker and Clements, who are like the big writing team. They ended up going on to do like Moana. They did a lot of those Renaissance movies like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid. And so they wrote Grace Mouse Detective, and it did okay. It made a small profit, which was way better than they had done in a while. And then they brought on Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, who were known for doing Little Shop of Horrors, right?
Great movie.
Back off Broadway. And so they brought them on, and they did Little Mermaid. And Little Mermaid was a smash success.
hit.
Yeah.
Dude, it kicked off the Disney Renaissance. Disney was stronger than really it had ever been.
For a long time.
Yeah, it really didn't start dipping until like Pocahontas, Mulan later on. But then like even then it was still pretty high up there.
Yeah. I would say it was right around the same time that like the Rescuers, because like I know the Aristocats and the Rescuers kind of had that same art style where it was very like liney, and you could there were definitely scenes where you could see
the
like
Rescuers,
the lines in it.
The original The Rescuers was in the 70s, which we just got. We're getting some new cards from The Rescuers in this set, which I don't believe that there's any in my list that I wanted to talk about because they're all okay. One of them is one of the Enchanted, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
The Devil's Eye Diamond.
Oh, yeah.
But
I know that word.
Rescuers Down Under, the sequel, didn't come out until like the 90s.
The 90s, yeah.
But
But
That's the one I remember.
I remember being a kid and that movie coming out in theaters because my sister was like a baby at the time.
You were a kid once?
Once, long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because, you talk about movies like The Aristocats and stuff. I remember growing up and watching that on VHS. Like, my very first cat that I ever owned, her name was Duchess.
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie I, like, distinctly can remember.
Yeah, which is... There's none really worth noting in this new set, but we are getting the Aristocats for the first time in set 7.
Kind of sick. As a grown man, a 26-year-old man, kind of sick.
Unfortunately, they're all vanilla, except for one that has Ward, which is their equivalent of hexproof.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty solid. It's better when you have like an ability that you're trying to protect with it, because it's just that he has Ward, but it is Thomas O'Malley.
I was about to say
yes.
it's got to be Thomas O'Malley at that point because he's like the most famous one of them. I think the voice actor originally did Baloo, Little John, Robin Hood.
Yeah, because he was a radio guy. Him and like the guy who played Captain Hook. Oh, his name escapes me right now, but a lot of the people from that era of Disney were people who were on radio and radio plays doing.
Well, because they had such good voices, and Disney was really one of those things where like talking cartoons and making feature-length cartoons was kind of a new thing.
Oh yeah,
and
Snow White was the first feature-length animated film.
So there was definitely that, like where they were getting radio people to do a lot of the voices because they already had the experience and had good voices that they could do the recordings for and then slap them in the movie.
And a lot of those radio people came from vaudeville, right?
Yeah.
So they had the comedy chops, they had the timing down, and it definitely gave them a very particular feel. Whereas with like Looney Tunes, it's like they were making interesting stuff, but it was kind of just one guy from vaudeville, Mel Blanc.
Yeah, and that guy was a man of 1,000 voices.
I was about to say, like, if you're gonna pick any one man to do something like that, they picked the man for the job.
I remember.
Incredible. He had a range of 8 octaves.
That reminds me of a story.
All right.
You ever hear that story about Mel Blanc that when he like was in had to have a surgery or something?
He was in a coma.
He was in a coma. That's right.
He'd been in a pretty bad accident.
Was in a coma, and they couldn't. He was unresponsive, and then finally the doctor was like whispering to him like, "Hey, Bugs, are you in there?" Like addressing him by the main character they did, and he answered, "What's up, Doc?"
Yeah,
that's crazy.
What is it? The most famous thing that he was capable of doing was to do the voice of a character impersonating another character of his.
Yeah.
So there's that famous duck season, rabbit season bit. Yeah. That's all Mel Blanc.
Yeah.
And he's literally doing Daffy Duck pretending to be Bugs and Bugs pretending to be Daffy.
Well, even watching any of those Bugs, Daffy, Elmer bits, rewatch those, keeping in mind that they didn't really edit audio back then. He's doing all of that in one take, switching between the characters, which is incredible.
I can't imagine.
Yes, but that was the quality of people that they had doing a lot of these voices and the voice acting for their movies. Nowadays, they just find some famous person who's already a celebrity and then get them to do a voice in a cartoon.
It always drives me nuts, man. There's so many good voice actors out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, you could pick them. They're like, no, I know who we get.
Chris Pratt.
Will Smith or Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt nowadays, yeah, he was Garfield and Mario, and like he doesn't fit either.
I didn't hate him in the Mario movie. Like
fine.
It was jarring,
Similar,
but
like
you get used to it.
Him
I
and
thought
Anya Taylor-Joy, I'm just like,
yeah.
they're both fine, but it could have been literally anybody, and it probably also would have been fine.
Dude, like the actual guy that did the Mario voice for all of the things, right?
Yeah, he's the dad in that.
Yeah. And when they're doing the intro, when they're doing their little like Mario Brothers plumbing service commercial, that's him.
Is it? Did they use his voice?
They
for
used
that
his
one?
voice for that because that was the whole like joke is that they put on this fake Italian accent and
That's
whatnot
so
for
funny.
the commercial,
Yeah.
and then they talk just like normal.
Yeah, it's like kind of sad too because Charles Martinet, who plays Mario and Luigi and all those guys, retired pretty much right after that. Now he's just going around as sort of like they call him the Mario ambassador, I believe now.
Yeah,
just
like he's
goes around and
officially
talks
got a
about it.
title now,
Which is great. He deserves it.
He did get recast pretty much right after that movie. So listening to that's his last like official Nintendo performance.
Yeah,
and it's a
little sad, bittersweet,
but
good word for it.
Okay, so
we love tangents on this.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Love tangents.
Oh, it's absolute fuel for the ADHD.
So, let's get into it color by color. So anyone who doesn't know, Lorcana has 6 colors of ink, which are amber, amethyst, emerald, ruby, sapphire, and steel. They go in that order because that's alphabetical. And unlike something like Magic, which has 5 colors, and you can just build it however you like, and the restriction is kind of, if you have too many, you're going to get, land screwed because you can't get the colors you need at the right time. With this, specifically, 2 inks maximum, that's it. Technically, you can do a mono.
Which is interesting to note because isn't it this set that they're actually introducing those hybrid colors?
Yes, I was about to say.
Because we were talking about that yesterday or the day before, about that it's like, hey, can you put this hybrid that has only one of your colors in it? And you're like, no.
Yeah, that was a big thing, is that with this set, we're introducing a major new mechanic, which are dual ink. So before, every card had one specific color, but now there are dual ink where there are cards that have 2 colors on them. And one of the questions a lot of people had was, are you allowed to put them into a deck that has, other colors? Like if you have a red-blue deck, which would be Ruby Sapphire, do you have to put your dual ink Ruby Sapphire card only in those colors, or can you put him in a deck that just has Ruby, so you could have Ruby Sapphire card in like a Ruby Emerald deck? And the answer is no, which I agree with. There was no way that they were going to allow that because with Ravensburger, they really want to keep this game as simple as possible. Like, it plays a lot like Magic in some aspects, but for the most part, they don't want it to turn into Magic, where there's a lot of like OTKs and crazy janky combos and things.
Yeah, which I understand that. It's one of those things, like I've always pitched Lorcana. Like if I have someone that comes in the store and they say, I have never played a card game, but I'm trying to just find some new hobby to do with especially if they mention like, hey, my kids are interested in this, immediately I go, hey, try out Lorcana. It's designed to be simple. It's designed to be a game that someone can just pick up, go. There's recognizable characters, which is always a huge jumping on point for people. But it doesn't mean that the game is not complex or anything like that, because I've seen the combos that people set up. I've seen the decks. Like, it's a fully cohesive card game, and I think that that's a really hard balance point to hit.
Yeah, I liken it to Super Smash Brothers, which is a family-friendly party game. Like, it is not designed to be competitive on the back end, but if you are willing to learn it, it can have such deep levels of complexity and competitiveness to it. So similarly, Lorcana, on a base level, very simple. It's like MTG with like way less flexibility, which I personally enjoy a lot about the game. But it's also, if you are willing to learn and willing to really build an interesting deck, you can do really impressive, really complex things with your deck and make a very competitive deck. The unfortunate thing is that with its simplicity, the meta has kind of all distilled into one place. So it hasn't, it's only a handful of specific meta decks, and they all have to work kind of at a particular speed, because otherwise, if they're going too slow, they're just not going to compete.
Yeah, which I've noticed the research I've had to do into the meta, especially like when we're getting up on set championships, I always try to kind of get an idea of what decks look like, because people are required to submit deck lists, so that way it makes it a little bit faster for me to dig through all of their stuff, and I can recognize card names a little bit quicker. Because I try to do my due diligence as the person who has to act as judge a lot of the time, because I'm the one running the tournament. I don't want to have to be sitting there like, if there's ever a question that comes up like, hey, I think this guy's deck list is wrong, God forbid that situation comes up.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be sitting there and go, okay, give me like 45 minutes, because now I've got to Google every single card.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like the meta really likes to solidify on like one thing, and it definitely values like speed and a lot of item usage. And
Yeah.
I know locations were kind of a big deal for a second.
Yeah, when they came out in set 3, locations were pretty big for a minute, but it kind of coalesced into, you either play a location deck that just has a ton of them, you play maybe one location that specifically works with your deck, or most meta decks don't play any locations. And it's pretty apparent that they've recognized that at Ravensburger, because this new set, there's no locations.
I was wondering if it was going to be something that stuck around. I think that the best way to go about that, like moving forward, just a guy that plays card games, so no real merit to what I'm saying here, but if it's something that they just do like one or two every so often, I think that will make it feel a bit more special, because I know, especially with set 3, they put a ton of them out, but that's because it was the big new thing, so it makes sense.
Yeah, like with Duel Link, there's quite a bit of them, although something I noticed, and I posted this in the Discord server that we have for our local Lorcana groups. So with Duel Inc., the way that it works is when the two colors are on the same card, it is placed within that color in the deck list. So you still have the same number of Amber, Amethyst, Emerald cards, but if there is a Duel Inc. that has Amber on it, because Amber is earlier in the lettering, it goes into the Amber and takes up an Amber slot.
Okay, that's interesting.
What that means then is that the most Duel Link cards that are taking up slots are in Amber, which is the weakest color within the meta. And then Steel, one of the stronger colors in the meta. And in fact, Ruby, Sapphire, Steel, the last 3 there that have the least slots being taken up by Duel Links, are the strongest in the game. So that I find interesting, the way that worked out. I just find interesting the way that they decide to sort things out in these recent sets, especially weird here, because for a while it was within a color, it would be alphabetized, all the cards numbered. But now they stopped doing that a couple sets ago, and now the Duel Links are just jammed in randomly. Like they're still like within that space, but like they're just randomly jammed wherever, and I don't get it. It's just nonsense. So I don't know what they're doing with that. But getting into specific cards, there's a lot of new puppy support, because in set 3 they released a lot of 101 Dalmatians cards, and the main one that was really goofy was Dalmatian puppy, tail wagger. Their ability is you are allowed to have 99 of these in the deck. Usually the limit's 4, those up to 99 of them. We have a local guy, Gunner. He made a deck out of that was Amber Steel. It worked weirdly well, considering that it was just a goofy deck, but not a goofy deck, Although he did have a goofy in it.
I see what you did there.
Yep, yeah, I get it. That was a joke.
That was like
A double pun.
But that was set 3. Cut forward to set 7 now, we're getting a lot more puppy support. And they actually have Duel Ink cards that are Amber Sapphire, which is not a very common thing, because Sapphire is pretty strong because that's the color that has ramp, but Amber is a pretty weak color. So we got a lot of new cards that are happening in that, including things like Perdita Playful Mother, which is a Amber Sapphire Duel Ink Whenever she quests, you pay 2 less for the next puppy character you play this turn, which that one that you can have 99 of is 2, so you just get one for free. And it gives all your puppy characters ward, so they can't get hit with abilities.
Right, so you got to take her out before you can take out any of the pups.
Exactly. Yeah,
Which makes sense. I mean,
and because they're 2 cost, 2 3s, like you can go super wide with them and just have them out for quite a while. The other one is Pongo, who's the dad.
Yes.
Pongo, dear old dad. At the start of your turn, look at the cards in your inkwell. You may play a puppy character from there for free. That's notable because it's one of the first cards. In fact, I believe it's one of the first cards that allows you to take anything back from your inkwell.
I was gonna say, because isn't there like a rule in your game that like says you can't look at your ink once it's down?
Yes. So the way that resources work in this game, unlike something like MTG, where you play a land of a particular color and it's a specific card that you will draw into, in this, certain cards are inkable so that you can just put them down and say this is getting devoted as a resource.
Right.
Face down, and it just counts as one. There's no specific colors to it. So normally the rule is you cannot look at your inkwell.
Right.
In fact, there have been cards that let you get some of the cards back from your inkwell, but they're always like, take them randomly, right? This is the first card that says, look at the cards in your inkwell, take a particular one, and put it into, not even put it into your hand, just play it straight from there.
Yeah, just play it straight from
That's
free.
really powerful.
Which in a puppy
That's
deck,
what I was saying.
a lot of your ink, because they're inkable, are just going to be puppies.
Right.
So you can just keep using this.
Just
Granted,
keep using the puppies.
you're losing the resource, but it's not that hard to get it back. Especially in Sapphire, you're
Right.
able to ink.
Because you're talking
2 or 3
about
a turn.
Sapphire being like the ramp color.
Yeah, that's why it is the strongest color right now. It's in so many of the meta decks because it's like, once you pair it with like red, which is all of your removals and your big hitters, like it just goes crazy.
Yeah.
You splash it in so that you can ramp out to your bigger things, your bigger, questing guys, your bigger hitters for your challengers and things like that.
Yeah, because I know like
yeah.
the red Mauis are
was gonna say,
really popular for that.
Yes.
It's interesting because the game I play is Star Wars Unlimited, and they have a very similar resource system where you are resourcing cards from hand, but we are allowed to look at our resources, rearrange them however we want, mix them up. It doesn't matter because they're in set 2. We got a new mechanic called Smuggle that allows us to do the same thing where we can play a card from the resource for its smuggle cost, play it, and then replace it with a card off the top of our deck. So we're not losing any resources, but we're able to kind of get that gotcha moment. And then as the game progressed, they put out more cards that could, like the scanning officer, that allows you to look at 3 cards in your opponent's resources, and if any of them have smuggle on them, make them discard them and replace them.
Yeah, that's the thing, is this opens up the possibility of that. Jerry, again, who we mentioned earlier, he was talking in the server about how a thing that they haven't explored in the design space is the possibility of inking cards face up, because they always specify to put it into your inkwell face down.
Face down, yeah.
So the possibility of having some cards that are face up that could be played from the inkwell, or maybe like turned face down to activate a separate ability, that's still open. It would be janky, so I don't know how well that would work, but there's still a
especially
possibility.
with I was gonna say I don't know if it was recent or not, but I do remember hearing about like the ability to remove your opponent's ink, like damage their resources. If that's a thing.
I'm trying to remember. I believe there is a card that allows that. It doesn't quite have the support with other cards yet to be super actually playable, but it is something that has begun
and it's
to
the possibility of
be
it
explored.
coming.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, the lot of new puppy support. It's going to be a blue-yellow thing. Main issue is just getting enough puppies, because despite them being, I think, a common, you get maybe 3 to 4 of them in a box.
Right, like that's something that we see a lot with Magic, where they have those cards that say you can have any number of this card, or you can have up to a certain number of this card, even at the common rarity, because of the way they design their spread for boxes are to, I wouldn't say fully support, but definitely lean into that whole draft environment and the draft ability. But you wouldn't want to crack open a pack and get 3 copies of the same card.
No, it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. Even if you could have any number of them in your deck, you still may only get 4 in an entire box at best. And that's like wishful thinking, because I know when the Templar guard.
Oh, yeah,
guy
Templar Knight.
Yeah, the Templar Knight. Because that was an uncommon in a set that only had about 8 cards per pack, and you only got X number of packs in a box, like it was almost impossible to get more than like 3 of them. And some boxes didn't have any.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, they're last I checked, they're like a 40-cent card. So if you wanted to get the full set, that's like $40. It's gonna be rough because I want to build that. It looks really fun, but I'm like, oh,
That's when you go, oh, this is really cool. And you go, oh, do I want to spend $40 on commons?
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
And then with the idea, because the deck size would be ginormous.
Yeah.
You're talking like a commander level deck for a game that's normally what, 50 cards?
60.
60 cards?
It's 60 minimum.
Yeah.
Technically, there's no maximum, which is how this can work. Yeah, I put together a deck list and it was like 240, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about
that's
that.
a lot. That's approaching the levels that I know at least with Magic. Because Magic has the same thing where you have a minimum deck size, but there isn't a clearly stated maximum.
Right.
But the rules that they generally use is as long as you can shuffle the deck without assistance,
Yeah,
then it is legal.
that's the rule here as well. It's not an official rule, but it is like
It's an
you gotta be able to
understood
do it.
thing. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to sufficiently randomize your deck. I think the exact wording on the one for Magic
Yeah.
is that you have to be able to sufficiently randomize your deck regardless of its size. And I think what the whole without assistance thing is definitely a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, because those two guys
Yes.
that brought
Yeah.
that friggin'
That's always how I've worded it.
3,000 card deck or something with
Yeah.
the hard sleeves.
Yes.
Brought
it
it
was
in like
so
Paul
funny.
Bears with a coffin.
It was so funny. I think that was a tournament in Germany of all places
Yeah.
for Yu-Gi-Oh that they pulled that
Figures.
stunt, and it was like, cool, you pull it the one time, and now it's banned.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're not doing that again.
All right, but yeah, lots of puppy support. We'll definitely see Gunnar playing that because he basically got everybody's puppies back in set 3 when they came out. So
Ah.
he has like 60 plus of them, and he can actually build it. The rest of us are gonna have to.
It would be
Wait.
interesting to see if they actually made a card kind of like how they did in Magic with like the Thrumming Stone. If there'd be like a way that you could play a puppy, have an item, exhaust it, go get another puppy,
Yeah,
put it in
and
your
just-
hand, play it, item, exhaust, go get another
just
one.
start
just
like
keep
a
doing
loop.
that.
Yeah. It could be possible. There are some things I'm gonna get into later that have not quite that loop going on
Yeah.
yet, but they have some like flexibility like that. So moving on from the puppies, in Amber we have the Amber Steel Bolt Super Dog, which is one of the more exciting ones that's coming out. A lot of buzz about this one because his ability is whenever you ready this character, which happens at the beginning of any turn, like most games, gain 1 lore for each other undamaged character you have in play.
That's insanely strong in terms of
Yeah,
ramp.
given that like unless you are pinging or you're dealing direct damage to things, as far as I understand it, the only way to damage a character is to attack it, and the only way to attack it is if it is exhausted.
Yeah, and also Amber and Steel, which are the colors that this card are in, are the colors that have Bodyguard, which is if a character with Bodyguard is exerted, they must be attacked before anyone else is.
It's similar to like
Sentinel and
Taunt.
taunt.
in
Exactly.
every other card game besides Magic.
I know.
Every other card game besides Magic when I think about it.
Because the Magic has like a very different combat
Yes.
system than most other games. It was the biggest thing going back to it after playing Lorcana, where I had to like change my head around of like, no, you don't target a specific thing. You just kind of swing, and they decide if they want to block
Yeah.
it.
Well, it's like there was one ability, and I don't think they really ever reprinted the ability, but it was called the Taunting Elf. Where when it
Yes.
attacked, it provoked, and you could untap a creature and force it to block.
Which is interesting.
And then they had the enchantment Lure, which
Yes.
just made every creature available to block the creature it had to block. But even then, like you said, it's not the mechanic of I'm attacking your guy, I'm attacking you, and you decide where you want to go with the blocks and things like that.
Yeah, Legends of Runeterra had something like that too, where it had an ability, I can't remember the name of it, where you could basically 2 separate abilities. One where you could hook a character where it's like this character has to block this other one, but then on the opposite end, there was an ability where you got to decide which character is going to block this one.
Yes. Yeah, I played a decent bit of Legends of Runeterra when it was still a bigger thing.
Yeah, it's fun, but I believe you can only do PvE now. Which
Yeah,
is,
they did remove the PvP, which made me sad.
the
but-
PvE is a little too easy, I
A
think.
little, yeah. If you've played card games, it is a little too easy. I am excited though because they did say they're coming out with a League of Legends card game officially
I saw
sometime.
it looks something similar to SWU. Kind
Yeah,
of?
I think that's from what they've shown off so far. It's definitely giving me those vibes.
Yeah, it's got.
I think that would be neat because I mean, if you think about it, the whole Runeterra universe and all that, it's Riot Games and
Yeah.
it's League of Legends, and so having those champions, I could see it being like Flesh and Blood or like Star Wars Unlimited, where you have a leader, you have that champion, that's your guy, and then you just build them up with items, or you have events, or you have things like that. You have little like minions, because I remember for a while there's another thing that they did where it had something to do with like you could play minions. I think it was a board game. I think it was like a board. I don't remember. I just remember like there was a mechanic that people were talking about doing where you would have these minions and you would use the minions to kind of generate your resources and things like that, and you could use those to build up your guys.
I'm
But I
trying
think
to think.
that would be an interesting kind
Yeah.
of gameplay kind of loop. Because it's different than like every other game that's out there right now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is that I'm loving it about like this TCG renaissance we've been in for the past
Mhm.
couple of years, that it feels like we just have so much stuff that's really working with the design space of, you know, a trading card game
Mhm.
and just doing something different, you know, changing things
Yeah.
up. Not everything is trying to be a clone of Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. You know, they're really trying to carve out and do their own things, Lorcana especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we have talked about it. I don't remember if we've talked about it on stream on the recording or not, but like the fact that all of these games that were coming out back in the day
Mhm.
were trying to be the king killer. I always call it the king killer because it's like the massive online multiplayer games coming out being, oh, this is the WoW killer, and
Yep.
and they always fail. And then you've got, you know, the GW has such a iron grip on the miniatures wargaming market that it's like, oh, this game's gonna come out, it's gonna be the Warhammer killer, and it doesn't
Doesn't
and
go
then,
anywhere.
you know, now it was same thing with Magic. You know, like Magic has been around for so long and has such a firm grip on that space, the TCG space. It's like any game coming out for a while there was like, oh, this is going to be the Magic killer. This is so much fun. This is going to be the Magic killer, and then it just dies.
And it's sad.
And you're
to
not
see.
going to unseat the king. You're not.
No.
Yeah.
You have to be different enough.
Well, that's the thing. Reading the book Console Wars, which was about, it follows Tom Kalinske when he was the president of Sega of America
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s. The thing that really talked about is that the reason Sega not only was competitive with Nintendo back in the 90s, but was actually for a bit more successful than them,
Oh yeah.
is not because they were trying to do the same thing but better, other
Right.
than both being video games, but because they were like, okay, that's what Nintendo's doing. Let's do our own thing, be very bold about it, take a lot of risks, and see how that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole story
I
behind
remember the
Echo the
commercials.
Dolphin.
Oh,
is
yeah.
crazy. It's like an acid trip.
Right.
It's like insane. The guy's like ideas behind that, and it's like it's an okay game, I would say, but like reading all that gives me a different appreciation for like this guy wanted to do a crazy art piece as a video game at a point when technologically that was barely feasible.
Well, yeah, and the fact that at the time video games were not seen as art like we kind of see them as now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, you're talking about, I remember those commercials, you know, watching, you know, being all excited to see it because we had a Nintendo. My dad got one because he was in the Navy. He knew a guy who was trying to, I don't remember. He was short on something, short on cash or something.
Yeah.
And so the guy sold him the Nintendo with like 13 games and an extra controller, and basically while my dad was on the ship, they had one in their office, and then we had one at home, and we could like compare scores and
Oh
whatnot.
man, yeah, the real jackpot.
But I remember when Sega was coming out, and the big catchphrase was Sega does what Nintendo don't.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I was like,
know.
ah,
You see some of those old
talking about it.
magazines.
Yeah.
The old magazines,
the old Game Informers and
The
stuff.
Game Informers, the Nintendo Powers, I forget if Sega had a proprietary one or not. I think it did.
Well, it talks about in the book that the idea of Nintendo Power was like a pretty revolutionary new thing.
A
And
magazine dedicated to video games.
It was one of the things that gave them kind of like an edge over Sega again. Because with the Super Nintendo, it's like they were kind of doing a lot of the same stuff over again, and people were finding it kind of stale. But back
card
to,
games
to
again.
Lorcana. So
this is a card game show at the end of the day.
So with bolts,
It's a nerd show, okay?
Yeah, it
Let's
is a
not get
nerd
it twisted.
show.
We talk about nerd crap.
I was
on
say
here.
we've talked about Warhammer enough. We can't just call it a card game.
So you gain a lore for each undamaged character when you ready bolt, which happens at the beginning of your turn. There are also some cards that let you ready characters in Amber again on your turn. So there are some interesting things that could happen with that. In the current meta, I don't know how much it fits because as far as Amber Steel goes, it's all just kind of aggro, a lot of ping damage stuff. But there are some cards coming out as well that will support that, like Kenai, Protective Brother, who's from Brother Bear, where it's at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted, you may ready another chosen character of yours and remove all damage from them. So you could do that to remove damage from someone, or do it to bolt, and then you get all of that over again if he's the only one who's been damaged. So that could be an interesting combo.
Which I'm sitting there thinking about it, like with the way this game is, from what I've seen, especially as an outside observer, the fact that you only go up to 20 lore, it really feels like if you go first and can establish your lore generation, you're just gonna win.
That's very true. Yeah, it's been shown that it is about a 60% advantage if you go first in any given game, which is unfortunate. Although there is a card, which we'll get into later, that kind of changes that. I don't know how much play it's going to see, but we will talk about that in a minute. Another thing that goes well with Bolt is Penny, Bolt's human, which was like the Miley Cyrus character, another Amber Steel card. And she is, when you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain resist 1 until the start of your next turn, which resist is any damage dealt, subtract 1 every time it is dealt. So that is a good way to protect them from getting damaged again from cards like Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, which when played just deals 1 damage
Deals
across
one
the
damage
board.
to everything across the board.
So resist 1 would mean that that character is protected from that.
Yeah, which I mean that's pretty relevant.
Yeah, so it could see some play. I don't know how competitive it'll be overall, but I think that there are some fun combos that you can make off of that card. Then getting into some general cards that are pretty strong. Snow White, Fairest in the Land. Quest for 2. Ability is this character can't be challenged. Period. Cannot be fought.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
How much does it cost?
Currently there's no prices up yet since they're not out.
No, like,
The
4.
resource cost 4.
Yeah.
Okay, I can.
It's not incredible. It is inkable. Right. If it was uninkable, it would probably be a 3 drop.
Yeah.
That's usually how they.
I was
gonna
say I've noticed that a little bit, is that like if a card is inkable, it tends to cost a little bit more than a similar card that's uninkable.
Yeah, there's a few different things where it's like they can use different factors to balance things out like that. Like they can make it cheaper but make it uninkable, make it quest for different amounts.
What's her power and defense? I think is what you guys call it.
2/2, but she can't be challenged.
That's true.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
So if you're not playing against somebody that has like burn,
yes.
She's just gonna run away with the game.
Or you have to bounce it or send it to bottom of, deck.
It was the problem I faced because this last Saturday for our Lorcana Day, we did sort of a proxy thing where you could proxy out set 7 cards to try out some of your ideas.
Right.
And my deck had no removal, ping damage, or anything. It was all based on just being able to challenge characters even when they were readied, which is an obscure mechanic that's like getting a lot more support in this set. So it looked fun.
Very similar to some of the One Piece cards that I threw in that friggin' mono red Zoro deck where you can just fight a character even if they're not rested.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, Jolene, who's like, you know, kind of the heart and soul of our current Lorcana community, she had brought this one and I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
And it just
so it's
like
just 2
ran
lore
away
every
with
turn.
it.
Boop, I get 2 lore. Oop, I get 2
Yeah,
lore.
put you on a
Oop, I get 2
10-turn
lore.
clock guaranteed.
Basically,
Yeah.
I
So.
think that's kind of like. Have they really like ramped up any of the lore reduction abilities? Because I know like in set 1 you had like 1 card that could do it. And like
There's
a couple of the later sets, I heard there was like 1 or 2 cards that could do it, but for the most part, it wasn't really a thing.
There's a handful of them in Ruby that do that. The main one that gets played is A Pirate's Life, which is a 6-cost song, which means you can exert a 6-cost or more to play it for free, basically. That gives you 2 lore and subtracts 2 lore from everybody else.
Yeah, so basically steals it from your opponents.
Exactly.
And then
it's also a sing together, which means you can use multiple characters as long as they
to
add
sing
up.
it. Yeah, okay.
So there's not a ton of it. It's not super viable for the most part. It's also, with a card like this, it's probably going to see play in Amber Steel aggro decks, which are generally cheaper cards that can survive for a while, that quest for at least 2, in the hopes that you can just get wide, quest out within
quest out.
4, maybe 5 turns.
Because that's the thing. Like I was sitting there looking at one or 2 of the games that I've seen here, people playing, like the fact that if you don't have that bounce, you don't have that removal, and because of it just being 20 and done,
Yep.
like you have to have that kind of stuff in the lore, or in the deck build that you're building. You have to have that kind of removal, because that's the main way people win. And I think right now it's the only way to win is to hit that 20 lore, right?
Yes. Yeah. So currently it's the only win condition. And that's the thing, is that basically there's 2 thoughts of it. Is either you are control, where you just like take control just like anything and then quest out, or you're aggro, where it's basically you are hoping to just quest out before they can control you.
Right.
Those are the main things in the meta.
Because I was gonna say, I've noticed. I don't know if it's like a trait of Disney, like with a lot of their Disney their proprietary Disney stuff. They don't like a lot of negativity, like negative things to affect the cards. So I know it's like, instead of calling it fighting or whatnot, they call it challenging. Instead of like putting a lot of mechanics that can reduce lore, it's a lot of like, instead you gain more lore than your opponent. So they're very, very limited on. It feels like direct damage. It feels like I don't know, because I don't know enough
It
the
depends
cards.
on the color. It's the direct damage is mostly in steel, which will be ping damage, or red, which is just direct removal.
Right.
Which, yeah, that's the thing, is that it's a very tempo-y game.
Right. It feels like they really don't want the game to become a situation where your opponent or you just have like a negative experience with the game. Like get into a situation where you just feel like you were completely crushed, that none of your stuff, they either drained you out of all your lore that you were generating, or they're able to just steamroll over top of you and there's not anything you can do about it. Like, so those really negative gameplay experiences, it seems like, from my perspective, obviously, again, as I'm not somebody who's heavily invested in the game, it seems like they're very much so trying to avoid that. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. Like, that's really not a bad thing. The idea is that you want people playing the game. You want people to have fun playing the game. And, it's very much so not like Magic, where somebody could bring a deck that just completely locks you out of playing the game. And that's not fun. Sitting there for an hour watching somebody play their own deck with themselves.
It's interesting that you say that, because I do agree that they're trying to discourage that kind of play, but having returned to competitive for the first time since sets 3 and 4, the current meta is decks that are pretty much built exactly like that. Like, they're not, they don't lock you out necessarily, but they are basically like, just fully take control of the board, just make it so that there was just no chance.
Right.
Like, but it's decided by turn 3, like whether or not you'll be able to come back. And it's frustrating for sure when that happens.
I can imagine.
To me, I've said this before, I like a game where the play happens at the table.
Yeah.
Rather than it all being decided in deck building.
That's
and
an excellent way to put
Yeah,
that.
that is
an excellent
that is probably
way
the
to put
best
that.
way to put it.
yeah, which there are definitely some of the meta decks like the Ruby Sapphire that is ramp control that's just like it's just designed to like wipe you out, nothing you can do about it, and it's frustrating. So another notable card in this new set in Amber is So Much to Give, which is a 2-cost song, which is draw a card and give a chosen character bodyguard, which is pretty substantial because it means also that you're able to give characters in colors that don't have bodyguard also bodyguard.
Right.
Yeah, which is a big deal.
Yeah, that means that you're going to be able to make some very interesting plays, and it's card draw, which is always great because this is like a lot of TCGs. You're always at a net -1. You draw a card, you're probably going to turn one into a resource and play one. So you're going to be.
So you have to be very particular about your cards, what you're playing, what you're drawing.
Yeah.
So this it replaces itself and it lets you give bodyguard to any character of your choice, which adds a lot of flexibility. And because it's a song, it's like you can play it pretty early on. So I think this one could get some play in aggro for sure.
Okay.
Let's see. No white. Next is the Troubadour, who's the turtle from the Three Musketeers.
Okay, I think I remember that character.
Yeah. He's Amber Steel, which works because he's going to be in Amber Steel song decks, 100%.
Okay.
Because he is the exact same stats as the Ursula Singer card, which is like the human Ursula. 1/3, Singer 4, cost 2, Inkable, Quest for 1. The main difference, all of those are identical, but he also has Resist 1 because he's a steel card as well.
So he's just Ursula, but better.
Exactly.
Hard to remove things really well.
Exactly. So yeah,
Comes down early.
Yeah.
He is 100% going to replace Ursula, or maybe if you want the flexibility, you could play both. But if you're cutting anything, you're going to cut Ursula in favor of this guy because he's an uncommon.
I feel like I could see both of them being run only for the draw consistency of getting that effect and getting that early.
Yeah. It could be helpful, although early on you mostly want 1-drop Cindy, who's a Singer 3, and you want 3-drop Ariel because not only is she Singer 5, but also she lets you search the top 4 of your deck for a song card.
Yeah, and as a One Piece player, search is like the most powerful thing in a game. With even smaller deck sizes.
Even in Star Wars, like the ability to look at the top X number of cards off your deck and pull a specific card. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Lord Vader, commander of the 501st Legion, is such a powerful card. You know, it's a 7-drop. It ambushes enemy, can attack a unit immediately when you play it. When played, look at the top 10 cards of your deck, and you can play for free up to 3 cost of villainous cards, right? You have, there's other cards that do it too, but like Recruit, same deal. Like you can look at the top 5. The most popular deck right now, one of the most popular decks right now is Boss Green. Boss Green runs Bounty Hunters, Bounty Hunter Quarry, I think is what it's called, where it's a 1-drop upgrade. You play on a guy, you defeat that guy, you collect the bounty. The bounty lets you look at the top 5 or 10 if it's a unique character for another unit and put it in your hand or put it on the battlefield if it's 3 costs or less. So, yeah, those kinds of effects I can see, like especially with the smaller deck size, really helps like that consistency of getting your
and just being able to dig and dig and dig and dig.
There aren't a ton of other cards like that see play. Most of them have been for items specifically, or there's Vision of the Future, which is in Sapphire, which is top 5, take 1 into your hand, rest on the bottom of the deck, and it's just sees play in pretty much every Sapphire deck because it's just great
one in the first
card
set
draw.
called like Train Your Brain or something like that, where it was like,
Develop Your Brain.
Develop Your
But
Brain.
that's you look at the top two, 1 to hand, 1 to bottom.
Yeah. So even though that's kind of like a miniature version of that effect, where you're just like, oh, I look at these 2 and I want that one and put the other one away.
And they're both storing the stone cards,
Right?
Because Develop Your Brain is Arthur studying, Vision of the Future is Merlin. Another one that I think we'll see play an Amber Steel song is Pippa Madrigal, Sensitive Sister, which is whenever one of your one or more of your characters sings a song, gain 1 lore. So she's just there, soak up some extra lore.
Yeah. And just it speed it up a little bit.
She'll die to like removal and things. It'd be nice if she could get ward onto her just to protect her more, but she's like the Shere Khan card where it's anytime somebody challenges, you get a lore. Like you just throw her out there. You don't expect her to really live that long, but you get some extra.
You'll
off
gain
of it.
something.
Right.
You gain 1 or 2 lore, and then this job has been completed, basically.
Exactly.
Can a character sing a song the turn you play them?
No, they have
Okay,
to.
so they have summoning
to,
sickness.
Yeah, it's
basically.
called drying.
Drying in
Yeah,
this game.
because-
okay.
Yeah, they're drying.
Within
ink
the
is still
lore, none of them are actually the character. They're a
Yeah.
thing called a glimmer, which is basically an ink golem. That's just like constructed. That's why when you ink, you're basically melting that character down into more ink to build your glimmers.
There's some morbid thought.
Yeah, right? I always like to tell people that it's like, yeah, it's kind of dark when you actually think about it. Next up, and this is the last 2 Amber cards that I'm going to talk about because they're pretty similar. Glass Slipper, which is it's a tutor. You search your deck for a princess card, put it into your hand, shuffle the deck, right?
Okay.
The issue I see with it is there's a lot of caveats. So it's uninkable. You're limited to 2 in your deck. You can't have a full set of 4.
Oh, so they actually have like restricted.
That's
lists.
the first one like that, yeah, where you can only have 2.
Does it say that on the card?
It does. You may only
Okay.
have 2 copies of the Glass Slipper in your deck, which makes sense because it's a pair of glass slippers, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Like that's a good way to like reason that effect out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you only have 2 slippers.
Yeah, it's also to activate it, you have to banish it, so it's single use,
Right.
and then you have to exert specifically a prince character, which there's a few. None of them are super playable, and it's like
So basically, you're adding a bad card or a caveat of bad cards to make a good card usable.
yeah, and it's like there are not many tutors. There's like a Merlin, which is also like a ton of caveats, very conditional. So like it is strong for sure, and there's like a lot of characters you can point this at. Like there's Cinderella Stouthearted, who's a super big body that you want to get out into play as early as possible. There's that Ariel I was talking about if we're sticking with Amber, but there's just too many conditions you have to meet. It's supposed to go with a new Cinderella card, which is Cinderella, the right one, which her ability is when you play her, you can put Glass Slipper from the discard to the bottom of the deck, gain 3 lore. So they're supposed to work together like that.
Right.
The idea being that you find her as a princess to put her on in your hand, and then you use the Glass Slipper you just banished to do it. I don't think it's going to see much play. There's just too much
It
to
seems
set up.
like I was gonna say it seems like too many hoops to jump through.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I just wish they would give us a tutor that wasn't so conditional.
Well, the fact that even also it's on an item instead of it just being like a song or an event, like
Yeah.
that probably would have like make it an uninkable event.
Yeah.
Make it cost like
Thankfully,
3 or 4.
items you can use their ability when they
Right.
come
They're
out.
like artifacts. You can
Yes.
use them right away as soon as they're in.
Yeah. Some things are just eternal and consistent with card types.
So then getting into Amethyst, we have another new mechanic. This one's much smaller. The Dual Link is all over this set. This one is illusions, which have a new keyword, vanish, which is when they are chosen for an ability or an effect, they're just immediately banished, regardless of what it was.
It's Magic the Gathering's phantoms and illusions.
Yes.
They're pretty much like Phantom Bear, Phantom Dragon.
Yeah, if it gets targeted, it goes
Right.
away.
Exactly. So they're supposed to work with Jafar Newly Crowned, who's in the starter deck. He's Amethyst Steel, and it's during an opponent's turn, if one of your illusions is banished, it goes to your hand instead of the graveyard.
That's
right?
pretty good.
It's pretty solid.
That reminds me
few
of
that do
the
that.
set 1 Dr. Facilier, the big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where
he does
like
that.
if your deuter gets banished, defeated, whatever,
There's also
it goes
the
back to your hand.
Mickey Sorcerer who does that for Magic Broom cards.
Broom cards, yeah.
Magic Brooms are
Yeah, I was talking with you about that.
I did hear that like brooms were kind of a thing there for a little bit.
Oh
they
yeah,
got a bunch
because
of
by
new ones.
set 4 we had gotten enough support that it was very playable. And there's a card here because I'm gonna rebuild my brooms deck because I love playing it. There's There's a new card that I'll get into here that will work really well in the Broomstick. But the unfortunate thing about Vanish, there's not much. There are exactly 3 cards that are illusions.
So it's probably something they're going to build on a little bit later.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to kind of put a taste of it in, see how it does,
Yeah.
and then if it's popular enough, they'll put more of it out later.
Yeah.
Yeah, the general idea is that they're pretty big bodies. Vanish is just another thing like making it uninkable, making it dual ink that will make it, be able to be bigger. Then we have Kronk laid back, who's an Amethyst Emerald, and he has Ward. If an effect would cause you to discard 1 or more cards, you don't. That's great because there's so many discard decks out there and they suck. So having a way to hold that back is great. It also works well with a new Cusco card that's in the same colors, which is at the start of your turn, everybody draws a card, or everybody discards a card. But if you have that Kronk, everybody else discards a card.
Does it, and just out of curiosity, does the Cusco card specify everyone draws a card, or does
Yeah,
it just say you and your opponent?
It says each player.
Each player. So I've always wondered this about Lorcana because I know it's designed specifically for just a one-on-one play style. I've been wondering if they're ever going to fully introduce a multiplayer format to the game. The same way that, like we have Commander and Magic or Twin Suns and Star Wars.
Generally speaking, if they did, they would definitely have to like alter the rules somewhat because I feel like in a 4-player game, getting to 20 lore, that might be a struggle, or it might just be super easy.
Multiplayer is technically supported. There's a handful of cards that do work specifically for that.
All right. So what other cards did you want to hit us with?
Well, you were talking earlier about changing the amount of lore.
Yep.
We have the first card that actually does that, which
Really?
is Donald Duck, Flustered Sorcerer. Opponents need 25 lore to win the game.
Nice.
Okay, that is interesting, and that I think that's good because it'll slow down the aggro deck a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they're gonna try to kill him immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if that'd be an interesting situation, like if you have like 20 lore or 21 lore or whatever, and then you finally get that one removal card to get rid of him, and you're just like, and boop, I win.
Yeah. I was thinking that is probably the case. He's a 6 body, which against aggro, like it's going to be hard to
Get rid of
deal
him.
with that for the most part. It's not going to have much of a use against like control decks, and unfortunately he's on inkables, so he's just going to be kind of dead weight in those matchups. But when you're up against aggro, he'll be a great way to slow your opponent down and give you some time to like catch up.
Do you have a way to give a character like ward?
There's a few. There's a Sardine Can, which is like from the Rescuers, and that you can exert it. Or no, you don't. It's not that you exert it. It's your exerted characters have ward.
Okay. So you like, well then then that just opens them up to be attacked too.
But most of the things in aggro are like 1 attack. So it's like they're gonna have to throw a lot of guys at him.
Weird.
That is interesting.
Yeah, because
I
they're not
think, like-
attacking. The aggro is in how much lore they're gaining.
Yeah.
So you want a bunch of cheap little guys to just quest.
Yep.
And then you don't
Gotcha.
care if they die.
So aggro in your game is more
High lore generation, low
high,
attack.
yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's more of like the high lore. What would you call that? Like
It's still aggro because you're rushing them down. You're rushing.
But see, when I hear when it's aggro, is short for aggression
Yes.
or aggressive.
I'd
So
still
it's
call
like
it. It's
I don't
still-
know. Like I feel like that would be more akin to like a challenging deck, a deck that just wants to challenge and knock your best stuff out while still generating passively that lore.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is you're still playing aggressively. You're aggressively working
You're
towards the
aggressively
win.
working to the and
You know.
okay, yeah.
That's how I contextualize
it's my
it.
magic brain that's like, okay, aggro. I'm playing things like Sabine ECL if I want to play aggro. If I'm in Magic, I'm playing red. Red deck wins.
Yeah. So another card that has a new unique mechanic is Baymax Giant Robot has Universal Shift. So Shift is a mechanic where for a lower cost, you can play a card onto a card of the same name, right? So you can play your bigger Cinderella onto your littler Cinderella, etc. if it has Shift.
Right. It makes it cheaper to play the bigger
Yes.
bigger units.
Universal shift, the new thing is you may pay this cost to play this on top of any character. So it turns
Okay.
every character into Morph, which was a set 3 character, the Treasure Planet blob guy, where his thing is you can shift any shift character onto him.
Yeah.
This is the reverse. You
The
can
reverse
shift
of
this
that,
guy.
you can-
Yeah, I was
onto
gonna
anybody.
I was gonna say that because I remember people making a really big deal about Morph because you know that was the thing that stopped people from playing a lot of these shift characters at times is if you're playing the big version, you feel pretty much forced to play the little version. So with Morph coming out, it was like, oh, there's a little more space, if
Right,
wanna
I can just play 4 morphs and then play all the big shift characters that I want, and then by the time you draw into another big shift character, you probably have the resources to just hard play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, with puppy support, we have a similar mechanic of puppy shift now, where you can shift this character onto any puppy character.
That is really interesting that they're doing like these specific versions of shift to kind of open it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Then one of the bigger ones that people have been talking about, Ink Geyser, 3-drop uninkable action. Each player exerts their entire inkwell. Then you basically return all but 3 cards from your inkwell randomly to your hand. So it's land destruction.
Oh,
That's
Jesus.
interesting.
And it's the first time they're doing that. I don't think it's going to get a ton of play, specifically because it's Emerald Sapphire. And in Emerald Sapphire, you yourself are wanting to ramp.
Right.
So I don't think you would do this unless someone is somehow ramping up ahead of you.
Right. I would say it's probably like how other games have done it, where they've kind of turned the color combinations on their head, where instead of building ramp in Sapphire, you do a lot of card draw, and then you have all this ink now. I have all this passive lore generation. I'm just gonna get rid of all your ink.
Takes you off of the ability to play like big removal. Like I could easily see that into certain red
Like,
deck,
no-
like red, into a red steel deck where you
Sure.
have to worry about be prepared and stuff.
I was
like
literally
that.
just about to say be prepared.
Exactly. It slows you down from the be prepared. Right after that, it could be like the 8-drop Sisu, who just destroys any 2 attack or less, which people have been afraid of this Sapphire Coil coming out because it's like every time you ink something, -2 attack to something.
Ooh,
And
that's
it's in
intimidating.
Sapphire, and that's the ramp color, so it's like you could be -2, -4, -6 if you play your cards right.
Wow.
And then it's like nothing is safe from that Sisu, which would be frustrating. It feels like there's a lot of support for the Ruby Sapphire meta deck, and that's I don't think it really needed it. It was already really, really ridiculously
I've heard,
overpowered.
Sounds
and I
like
feel
it.
like at a lot of the bigger events that I've seen, it seems like Ruby Sapphire pretty consistently is putting up numbers. So
Yeah.
Which is funny because I remember in set 1, and that's really the only context I have. I was trying to put together an item deck running like Sapphire Steel for like a whole new worlds, to draw a bunch of new cards, to the bell that gets better with more items that you have, the Tamatoa that gets better with more items that you have.
Yeah, and there is a new Tamatoa that's like you get 2 items back and you get to play an item for free. Very different stats. We are kind of running low on time, but like that's a notable card to look into. Mickey Mouse Inspirational Warrior, check that out. Return of Hercules is basically show and tell for Magic, but in Emerald now. There's nothing massive that you would really play with that yet, but like that could definitely make things pretty ridiculous. And any other notable ones to point out? Yeah, there's just a lot of exciting things. The Mulan Mushu combo, we finally got Mushu. It was the biggest meme in the community for a long time. It's like we got the butler from Big Hero 6 before we got
Right.
Mushu.
yeah, they were really just like waiting on that one.
Yeah, but there's a
I mean, they
lot of
didn't want to
exciting
pay Eddie
cards.
Murphy.
Yeah, he has a big fee.
A lot of exciting cards. Set 7 introducing a lot of weird, interesting mechanics, or like really bolstering ones that were kind of more obscure before. So definitely the meta is going to shift in interesting ways, I think, and I'm very excited to see how it goes. And then in set 8, that's the end of this next chapter. Every 4 sets is when they like bring out the big villain. The last time it was Ursula. This time it's going to be Jafar. And then set 9, they've already mentioned it's called Fabled, and we're like, is that going to be the reprint set? And they're going to like start cycling stuff out.
That
hard
would
to
be
say.
interesting. Because you guys don't have a rotation right now or anything like
No.
set in stone for like a rotation.
Yeah, we have one card that's been errataed. Otherwise, everything is legal.
Well, while I got you here,
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about something interesting coming up, which is going to be the D&D show that we're going to be doing here at Deep Dive.
That's right.
That's something that you and I are both part of.
Yep, we both got callbacks for
yep.
the preliminary one shot. See how
Yep.
everything gels together.
So that's the thing is like if anybody, any of our 3 loyal listeners out there are not getting a callback, well, that's sorry for you. Like we've already gotten the list of people that have gotten the callbacks.
It was a lot of people. It was like
Dude,
20.
there were so many. 22 people showed up for the
22.
audition, and we had a couple that auditioned previously and a couple that auditioned after.
Yeah, and they cut it down to 12. They're gonna run those two groups of 6 as separate parties to see which ones they're gonna continue with as the final party of 6.
And
So
that's and really
hope
just
it
to
goes
see
well.
like, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna record it,
Yes.
and then it's to see like what our presence is on camera, how our comfortability with the characters and whatnot. I want to know. I mean, curious. What are you playing?
Currently, because I auditioned with a character that I've played quite a bit, Gilbert Mareami, who's a Dragonborn bard.
Okay.
See, no one ever asks, but it's just French for swamp friend. Because he's just a Dragonborn he's basically the alligator from Princess and the Frog, but as a Dragonborn bard.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a silly concept
irony
that I ended up falling.
Shut up. I can see that look on your face.
I'm so glad we're not video just yet.
Just yet.
Just yet.
So I find that hilarious.
Yeah.
Because the character that I brought is a long-running NPC that I use in a lot of my games.
Yeah.
Named Placide Dulac.
Yeah, he's
Who's
Creole.
a Cajun. Yeah, he's a Cajun lizard folk.
Right, because
So he's basically the alligator, and I kind of like modeled him a little bit after the big-lipped alligator from All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah, that's the thing is Gilbert is also Cajun. So I was auditioning, and I was just like, interesting expressions, and then they're like, yeah, Nick also auditioned with Cajun. I'm like, oh, that's that'll be weird
interesting.
If we ended up both
Very
doing it.
weird.
But they asked for the sake of like balance within the parties for me to do a wizard, a warlock, or an artificer.
Sure.
So I ended up going with a wizard, a rat folk wizard.
Oh, nice.
Is
that from Monsters of the Multiverse?
No, actually, it's a homebrew based on Planeswalker, or not Planeswalker, Plane. What is it? There's the other thing that's similar to D&D that a lot of people were going back.
Plane Chase? No. I know what you're talking about.
I never played it. I heard people.
Planescape.
Planescapes.
Yeah.
I was about to say.
It's a Planescape monster that someone homebrewed into a 5e race.
Okay.
And so I wanted him to be from Menzo Baranzan, the like Drow city. And it was like, it's based on New York. I'm like, a New York rat wizard who's like, he's a necromancer.
Are you playing Splinter? Are you playing Splinter?
Nah.
Missed opportunity.
I based him more on James Gandolfini from The Sopranos.
Oh, okay.
His name's Nick Dactrinil. They call him Nicky Numbers. He used to
Numbers.
count cards out in the alleyway, shoot a little dice. Maybe he got nimble fingers. Maybe pick a few locks. But
I love it.
He went straight. He became a legitimate locksmith. He doesn't open no locks that don't belong to someone who paid him or. The money's right.
I feel like this would be better as a rogue character, honestly. Like a
that's the thing. Yeah, the rat
arcane
folk,
trickster.
The rat folk are like their deception. They got stealth proficiency, so they're clearly designed more for rogue. But I was like, I'm going wizard. He's gonna be a necromancer and have little like skeletal rats hanging out helping him.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it.
It should be pretty fun. I was kind of sloppy with it at first because I'd never played a wizard, and I showed it to my friend Gunnar, and he got very upset at how sloppy I made it because he's a serious DM.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's valid. It was pretty irresponsible of me not to maybe check about using a homebrew race with the DM first because I didn't. Here's the thing. Yeah. found it on a wiki because I googled like, are there rat characters? And it was like D&D 5e rat folk. I'm like, cool, that sounds cool. I open it up, I look through it, it's like, that's pretty cool. And I built the character, and then I sent it to Gunnar, and he's like, where'd you find this? I'm like, I sent him the link. He's like, so says homebrew in a big purple banner. I'm like, what do you? Looked at it so many
Just
times.
over
I looked
it.
again, and I'm like, it is there, but it's exactly where an ad would be.
Right.
And it was
so your
formatted.
Your brain just automatically said,
Yeah,
"Oh,
it was
it's
like
an
one of those
ad."
crappy little. It looked like a crappy HTML ad, so my brain just skipped right over it every time I opened it, and I felt so dumb. And it's like, yeah, Gunnar was very upset that I like made a whole character and was gonna submit it without clearing it with the DM, and he's right. That's pretty rude, pretty irresponsible. So I'm glad.
I
he
mean,
called me out
don't
on
beat
that.
yourself up about it. Honestly, like
I'm
for
feeling
the
okay.
one shot at least, the one shot, like there's a lot of like reflavoring that a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, my guy, like I said, he's gonna be lizard folk. He's a ranger. I'm going with the monster slayer because in my own head canon for the character, um, in my games he's retired.
Yeah.
He's been retired for years. He's opened up a restaurant. He basically runs a restaurant in the main kind of city that my party kind of runs around through, and they're friends with him.
Nice.
But in my own headcanon, this is like when he was adventuring still. And so like he runs around, like you said, he's a monster slayer because the idea is that he's hunting down monsters. His whole purpose for adventuring is to hunt down monsters to eat them. He's gonna kill them, chop them up, throw them in a stew, and figure out what's the best way to cook and eat them.
See, I was in a party with someone. I believe they were a barbarian, but her whole thing was that she's a chef. She likes to taste everything, and all of her weapons are like different fish. So she had like a swordfish sword and like kelp like daggers, and it was like, it was a very funny character. It ended up only being like a one shot, but I was always like, man, I'd love to hang out more with that character and see what she's all about.
Well, that's genuinely like going into this. I basically watched a lot of like Southern cooking shows, specifically Justin Wilson, who's a very old time, like he had a show on Mississippi Public Access in like the 70s. So like
Wow.
we're talking like old school Cajun chef, always says stories and things like that when he's cooking. And so I was like doing a lot of that, but then like I looked at the lizard folk originally because I was like, they have an ability called Hungering Jaws that allow them to make a bite attack as a bonus action and then get health for doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only usable like once, or it's like it's like number of proficiency bonus or whatever between rests. But like the fact that like this character was there, basically he's this big, fat, overweight lizard folk that just likes to eat things. And so like reflavoring, I have a hand axe, but instead it's going to be a meat cleaver.
Oh, fun.
His primary attack is going to be his bite, because I was trying to like finagle like a way to get that bite in, but because it's not a light, it's not an offhand weapon or anything like that, I'd have to use it as the primary attack, but then went like 2-weapon fighting so that then he could also chop with the cleaver.
See, that's always the thing, because like I usually end up being the DM or the GM, and I like to play mostly rules light systems, things like Powered by the Apocalypse. I'm mostly there for like the role play, the improv side of it.
I feel that. I feel that a lot because I'm a big time storyteller. If it's cool enough and the rules don't support it, okay, so do it anyway.
See, that was the thing, like where I didn't quite get it until Gunnar like set me straight on it, is that like that's how I always am. If somebody showed me a character and it's a homebrew race or it's something that like doesn't quite make sense, I'd be like, if you really want to, let's play it out. But like, learn from my mistakes, people. Like, it is really kind of pretty rude to your DM not to clear like homebrew races and stuff. You know, Brayden ended up not caring, which I'm glad for. But like, for certain, there are some people who will take some offense to it, and it's like, it's going to be more work for them because they got to have so many more reference materials. The thing he said to me was, the general rule is if you take from even like the official materials, try not to take from more than 3 total books.
Right.
So that the DM doesn't have to run around.
That does kind of like harken back to, because I've been playing this game forever.
Mhm.
It does harken back to some of the older editions where it was literally rules the game, where you
Yes.
just I literally had players pulling obscure rules and obscure feats from like 12 different books, and then I had to cross reference things and double check things and make sure that it's actually working the way they intended it to, with a bunch of like all of the splat books that were coming out, all the magazine stuff that was coming out. So I definitely get that. Like, you really want to
It's-
try and condense the character down to just a few sources.
Yeah, it's easier now with the internet because you can
Right.
Google most things, but like as I'm an example, like sometimes when you Google, if you're not paying attention, you could end up finding something that's
Yeah.
unofficial or homebrew. And it's like after I did extra research on the Rat Folk, there are actually like 3 or 4 implementations different people have made, and they all play like differently. They have different stats. So I had to make sure, like, when submitting it, it's like, this is the version I'm using so that, you can approve it. Because, like, there's some things in there where it's like, it could be OP if it was played as a rogue. By
Right.
playing it as a wizard, it's hampering a lot of that extra stuff.
Sure.
But
I mean,
those-
it's like the goblin, where the goblin has the nimble escape, where they can, as a bonus action, do I think it's a dash or a hide, which kind of doubles up on like the rogue's cunning action they get at second level. So you would think that race would, because of their dexterity bonuses, their dark vision, their fury of the small, where it's that extra little boost of damage.
Yeah.
Like, you would think that would be a really good rogue character, but in reality, because you're doubling up on that bonus action, they actually make better fighters.
Yeah. That's also like the Rat Folk, the version that I'm using, has thin frame, so they are a medium creature, but they can squeeze through spaces that only smaller creatures could do.
Right. No, I mean, that's thematic. That's flavorful. I wouldn't have an issue with that. And I think that's one of the big things as a DM with more experience. A lot of times I say, if it's unearthed arcana, I don't want to use it because I feel like that's playtest material, especially the new
Yes.
unearthed arcana. It's playtest material. It's really untested. You don't know if it's going to be extremely powerful or extremely underpowered, which is also a problem. So, as a general rule of thumb, I don't like unearthed arcana, but I love doing homebrews. The thing is I often have a caveat with my players, and they understand when they sit down at my table that, yes, if you bring a homebrew to me and I'm like, cool, that's awesome, let's do it, I always reserve the right to make some changes. If I feel like, oh, it's a little too strong in this area, let's dial it back a little bit. Or if I feel like, wow, that ability, I get it, it's thematic, doesn't really do anything for you, let's bump it up a little bit.
That was also my point with submitting this character, is that if this was submitted to me, my thought would be, I'm going to look over it. If there's anything I have a problem with, I'm going to say, like, okay, you can use this, but we have to take away thin
Yeah, we've
frame,
gotta
or
do this, or we've gotta do
we
that.
lower the speed by 5 feet because it's like he's like a 35-foot speed, right? Just like some small things to balance it out a bit.
Right.
And then, there were so many things I learned building a wizard because it's such a like crunchy, rules-heavy character.
It really is. Like I always tell people that if they want to play a spellcaster right off, a lot of times your better option is to pick a sorcerer, because it's a single list and you can change out your spells every level. You can swap what spells you know at every level. But like it's very much so like a straightforward, I am going to do the thing, and then that's the thing I do. With a wizard, you have access to so much more, because a wizard at first level, sure, only knows like 6 spells, has 6 spells in their book, but you can prepare a couple of them. And then you only have a certain number of spell slots. So you've got like 3 pieces of information that you have to keep track of as a spellcaster, beyond just the duration, the casting time, the range, the area of effect, things like all those other little minutiae that you have to learn about the character. And generally speaking, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the game, but I am very familiar with a lot of the basic stuff that's in there. I still tell my players, like, you need to make sure you know the character, because it's not my job to keep track of what your character can do. have the page number, have the information in front of you so that we're not spending a lot of time looking stuff up.
Yeah, that's my other point, is that I also made the mistake of taking too many spells, because I use Dungeon Master's Vault, which is just it's basically a character builder, and it's once you hit the limit, it'll usually just gray everything out, be like, okay, that's your maximum.
Yeah.
With Wizards, because technically the limit is like 290,
Yeah.
if you can argue it, it didn't stop me, so I took like 18.
Yeah.
Which at level 5, I get 14, right?
Right.
And
So
then
I did
I-
want to mention something about
Yes.
this, but I'll let you finish your thought first.
But Gunnar also told me, it's like, okay, you would have to basically use starting gold to get those extra 4, and that would be like at least 200 more, plus one of the spells, Summon Undead, requires a 300 gold point like skull as like one of the components. So it's like, that's so much. You can't do that. And I'm like, okay. Plus, I did not understand, because I couldn't find it in the wizard listings that I was looking at, if there was a limit to your first, your second, your third levels. There are. They're in a different part of the book. But thankfully, multiple people I know just have those memorized, so they were able to tell me, it's like at 5th level you get 8 first levels, you get 4 second levels, you get 2 third levels. You can take lower ones with your higher ones. You can't do the other way around.
Because I remember somebody mentioning that I honestly had forgotten you were going to be playing a wizard, but like I do remember overhearing people talking about that and wanted to mention in there, it's like, you're not wrong that by the book, as you level up, you only get 2 new spells every time you level up that you can just add to your book, things that you just learn over time, because they say it's basically like you doing during your downtime doing research or things like that could justify you having the new spells and whatnot. But the advantage of being a wizard is the fact that if you find a spell scroll of a spell you don't have, you can just add it to your book. It costs money, it costs time, but you can just add it to your book. So the fact that we're starting at 5th level, which means you're going to start with more gold than normal. Not to mention, generally speaking, and it's different with every DM, but generally speaking, a character that starts at that 5th level, which is a threshold, because this game works off of thresholds, 1 through 4, 5th through 10th, so on and so forth down the line. When you hit that threshold, you're supposed to have access to, by this point, a common magic item and an uncommon magic item, which can range value between anywhere from 100 gold pieces to 1,000 gold pieces. So there is definitely flexibility there, depending on who your DM is, depending on what they say. You could reasonably have extra spells in your book that you wouldn't get by leveling.
Yeah, I would also argue that it's like at 5th level, you've definitely been a wizard for a while. And also, the things that limit you are not the spells you know, but the spells you can have prepared and your spell slot.
Exactly.
So it's like, it doesn't matter that much if I have 4 extra spells, because I can only have 9 prepared, and I only have like 2 like level 3 spell slots anyways, so I can only do any one of those once. And I have Animate Dead, which I'm going to have to be like redoing every 24 hours to keep my guys going. So I really only have 1 level 3 slot.
Right, because you have to basically sacrifice that spell slot every time. And if you picked it up beforehand, when you hit 6th level, now all of a sudden you've wasted, it feels like you've wasted that learned spell, because at 6th level as a necromancer, for free, you get Animate Dead.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's at 6th level,
It's 6th
and
level.
you get additional
corpses or additional minions whenever you use it.
yeah.
I just have to chime in. Listening to all of this makes me so glad that my go-to is Assassin Rogue
Yeah.
or
You are such a
any form
pumpkin
of...
spice latte woman.
You can
Basic.
say whatever you want.
Basic.
You get to sit there and play 5D chess with your turns. It comes around to my turn. I go, oh yeah, I stabbed the guy.
I stabbed
Let me
the
roll
guy.
I know.
as just as much damage dice as you.
See, that's how I feel in Cyberpunk, because I'm seeing like everybody else doing like these super crazy rolls with all this, but it's like, I'm a melee only character right now, so it's basically like, are they close enough for me to hit? No, then I run into them for next
Yeah,
turn.
get
It is
closer.
a flow chart. That's why I'm loving it with Cyberpunk 2. Our party is almost entirely melee people. So our fights just boil down to, oh, is he close enough for me to hit? Yes, no. If no, I'm going to move towards him. Is he now in range? I go back Is he in range? Yes, no, yes. Hit him with weapon.
And
Roll
honestly, in
dice.
Cyberpunk's melee is so much more dangerous than range combat.
Yeah.
I have run my party through the gambit of different combats, and by far the only time that they have ever come close to just being absolutely murked was when I had a bunch of melee scavers just going after them.
Melee is brutal.
It's so gross.
I've come so close to death several times, mainly because my body is 5.
Oh,
Because
yeah. No,
that's
that'll
the
do
thing.
it.
I sat down and I'm just like, I'm gonna build this out, and I didn't really understand because my last character was definitely like handguns, shoot from afar,
Sure.
don't get into it. So this is my first time playing a melee character, and I built him pretty dumb. Now he might survive because he has grafted muscle and bone lace.
Sure.
But yeah, I built my backup character to still be melee, but be a full body conversion. So she's got a body at 12 starting out.
Ooh,
so
Jesus.
she'll survive longer. I don't think this guy is long for this world, even if I play it smart.
What kind of humanity will that character have?
Single digits.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is the character I have right now started with 11 humanity, and after getting the muscle,
my
grafted muscle
God.
and bone lace, was down to 3.
I would.
So at that point, you're just a cyber psycho.
my
Pretty
character's
much.
at like 24 humanity, I think, and I am stressing because I'm getting a hardened casing on Cyber Eyes because of a mission that we're doing soon, and that's an additional D6 humanity
Go to
loss
therapy.
per eye.
my
I'm in
new-
therapy right now.
That was the first thing that I had saved up for with this character. Whereas the FBC I built, I basically made sure she started with a ton of humanity and only took the hits I absolutely had to.
Right.
I was like, at first I was just like, maybe I'll get a Kerenzikov because this guy only has a Sandy, and it's like, it was never quite enough. But then I was like, that's too much humanity loss. Also, she's got 12 body, so really she can just soak up some damage. We'll just assume that she gets hit a lot, and not worry about that till later.
Not with a good reflex. If you don't have the good reflex.
Yeah, like you were saying with like it being 5D chess, the wizards, especially necromancers, from what I've heard at higher levels, basically can turn into chess. Like you can have
I mean,
your
yes,
your
it's not
skeletons
wrong.
can get equipped with like magical armor and magical
Yes.
weapons, so you basically have your own party.
Well, that's
that you're
definitely that's definitely
controlling.
something that you work out with your DM, because there are definitely some extra spells that are not found in the PHB that can really kind of ramp up your ability as a necromancer, give you that traditional necromancer feel. Because I remember like older editions and even just the vanilla 5e, the necromancer did not feel like a necromancer. It didn't feel like this minion master that summoned the undead or raised the dead of their enemies and used them to fight. No, it was, oh, I hit that guy and debuff him. I hit that guy and curse him. I do this, I do that. You know, it's a lot of like negatives and penalties and things like that, instead of it being like, I want to summon an army of the dead.
Yeah.
And so, like, with a lot of the new stuff that came out with Tasha's, with Volos, with, well, not Volos, but Tasha's and Xanathars and whatnot, you definitely have a lot of, like, more summon undead, summon greater undead, things like that you can really kind of use to kind of feel more like that necromancer, feel like more that, because back in the day, clerics made better necromancers.
Yeah, Grave Clerics.
Yeah.
Well, not even just grave clerics, but like back in the day, it was negative energy channeling clerics that
okay,
were devoted
yeah.
to a neutral god or an evil god, because then they could go, oh, I'm going to animate dead, and then I'm going to command undead with
Yes.
instead of it being turn, it's command. I'm going to command undead, and now I have this army of undead that have to follow my will. And so like now you have to wait to much higher level to get spells like Army of the Dead, where you just instantly summon a makeshift army.
Yeah, and at the layer levels, you're able to just, if you find undead, take over.
Yep, it's mine. You're mine now. Well, I'm getting the signal that I'm talking too much. So
No such thing.
Yeah, we've been recording a
We've
minute,
been-
but
we've
it's
been-
also
we-
we're in an active game shop. At least one of us is on the clock, so we've had to step away a couple times.
A
That
No,
couple of
I
happens
times.
promise. I've
sometimes.
been here the entire time,
Uh-huh.
listening intently. I don't just have to jump in on the topic
oh
randomly.
yeah, randomly, not even know what we're talking about.
Look, I do my best. I try to listen.
Yeah, it's a lot of exciting things. We got the D&D show. They'll be coming up, in a while. We're still in the preliminary stages, still working it out. New Lorcana Set 7, keep an ear out for when pre-orders go live at Deep Dive, because
They're actually live today.
live today.
Yeah,
really?
he just updated the system, so
Yes,
they
I got
are
it.
live
Fixed.
today for
Do
pre-orders.
you wanna release any info on that, or?
I mean, price points, everything's MSRP. Off the top of my head, I know booster boxes are going to be $143.99. Troves are $49.99. And I think starter decks are same price they've always been, which is $19.99.
Did you get any of the gift sets?
I only have a couple of those coming in, so I don't think I'll be able to pre-order them out. So it will be first come, first serve. But
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's just a distributor thing. That's
yeah,
not
it's
even,
hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to
those-
get a lot of stuff like
I
that.
put in for several, a lot more than I'm getting, but it's
The
just
gift
the
sets
trade-off.
this time around are very exciting, because previously it'd be just like a few packs of the current set and a promo card. This time, promo card, box, dividers, packs from sets 2 through 5.
That is nice.
Or no,
Yeah.
sets 2 through 6,
Help you
5
kinda
packs.
fill out.
So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get a pack of each. That's super exciting.
Yeah,
There's some
kind of help
big
fill
money
out some
cards
of
in
the
set
cards
2.
you might be missing, or just that chance, that gamble to try and get something.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you get that Beast Tragic Hero, that's a $30 card.
Yeah, that almost pays for the gift set at that point.
And you could also get a Diablo, which is like a $20 card. He was set for, I want to say. Like there's some big potential with that one.
But so yeah, we have that. Next week, I want to talk about the Warhammer tournament that we just had.
Yeah, we didn't really have time for
oh,
that today.
yeah,
I did want to
yeah.
kind of like generically kind of get into it, but at the same time, with having our guest here today, like we
We
definitely had a
wanted
lot
to-
more to talk about than we
Yeah.
normally do.
And we were able to have a bit more tangents and a bit more flow. I like having a guest on. I want to try and do this a bit more.
yeah,
But
somebody was very worried about having a guest this early on, and I tried to tell him,
I
"Hey,
was.
let's just do a test run."
I was. I look, I'm always just anxious with things
I
like
know.
that.
I'm just
This
giving
is
you a hard time.
uncharted territories for us.
You're not wrong. I mean, like I said, I like having somebody else to bounce some stuff off of, like, because let's get it straight. We are friends.
Of
we are
course.
friends. We've been friends for a while now,
Allegedly.
allegedly. But having somebody else on kind of gives us a different perspective.
Mhm.
We might start doing this a little more regularly.
Yeah, I
where
think it'd be fun.
We just kind of rotate the third chair, like most of these podcasts do. They
Exactly.
rotate third chair and whatnot, so you don't hear the same chuckle
Yeah.
heads that are constantly talking. But
So
it was great actually having you on today.
Yeah, thanks for
Iggy.
having me. I was excited to do it and hope to come back someday.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
for
no, like I
sure.
said, we're definitely gonna try and rotate through. If we get something big that's in your wheelhouse, we'll definitely give you a call and,
Oh, yeah.
and have you come up.
But so, just a quick rundown for what to expect next week. We'll talk about the Warhammer tournament, talk about the Final Fantasy Magic.
Oh god,
spoilers
yeah,
we're
that was
getting.
another one that I wanted to talk
Oh,
about. 'cause,
yeah,
like,
yes.
I've been playing through Remake lately, and it's
so much fun.
amazing.
Such a great game.
I got that jumbo cactuar nonsense.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Would give that thing trample. Whoops.
Also, we have Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers going right now because that
Okay.
set comes out in April.
Yeah, I did hear some about that.
And hopefully, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the Emperor's Children box because that comes out March 15th for Warhammer. So
Let's
there's
see,
a lot of
what
exciting
is
things.
next Monday? That's gonna be March 3rd.
March 3rd.
That's
March
my
3rd.
birthday.
Okay. Well,
Hey,
this-
happy
happy
early
early
birthday.
birthday.
Thanks. I'm old.
Maybe we'll get them to come. We'll get them to come back
Yeah.
for their birthday.
Hey,
It'd be fun.
I wouldn't mind. I
But-
might be here anyways with everybody because
I mean, honestly,
this is the spot for it.
It is the
Iggy
spot.
has been a super help getting this set up today.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think if we sound really, really good today,
I hope.
it is entirely Iggy's fault.
And then if we sound horrible,
It is entirely Tyler's fault.
okay, yeah, that works for me. But
I take no responsibility.
perfect. That's how we like to hear it. No responsibility from one member. But all right, guys, it has been so much fun
Yeah.
going over this. As always, I'm Tyler.
I'm
joined-
Nick the Red,
I've
and
been
with
Iggy.
us, Iggy.
All right, so have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, one last thing.
Oh wait,
Watch us on Twitch.
Yes.
Tuesdays. We need to get more viewers, people.
Yeah,
Yes.
Swab and Dex.
Swab and
Dex.
Dex on Tuesdays. I think this week is going to be Magic again. And I'm kind of curious as to what's going on because I haven't even heard anything about it.
Ooh,
I think
I've
we're
been
doing
tuning
some
in.
budget decks, is what I'm hearing through the grapevine.
Ooh, budget is always good.
All right.
Definitely always want to know.
But okay, with
Get out of
that-
here.
All right, have a great one, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Attention small business owners. Are you looking to amplify your reach and get your business in front of more customers? Deep Dive Games has an exciting opportunity for you. We're currently seeking local businesses in the St. Mary's, Georgia and Athens, Ohio areas to advertise on our 2 weekly podcasts. With 6 ad spaces available, you can showcase your brand to our engaged listeners and drive traffic to your business. Choose to pay per ad or save big by securing a year's worth of advertising in advance, locked in at the current rate. Ready to take the next step in promoting your business? Don't miss out. Contact us today at 912-439-3940 or shoot us an email at deepdivegamesllc@gmail.com. Let's work together to get the word out and grow your business. This episode is brought to you by CM Design and Gifts. CM Design and Gifts is Camden County's premier destination for everything including embroidery, laser engraving, direct-to-film printing, trophies, signs, banners, and more. Locally owned and operated by a Marine Corps veteran and his family, the store is conveniently located behind the Brown Bag Liquor Store in Kingsland, Georgia. No job is too small or too large for this thriving company, eager to support our military community and residents. Contact them at info@cmdgifts.com or visit their website at www.cmdgifts.com. This episode is brought to you by Game Over Video Games and More in Kingsland, Georgia. Are you looking for video games, classic consoles, or a fresh collection of new releases? Game Over Video Games and More in Kingsland, Georgia has it all. Whether you're a modern gamer or just want to relive your gaming nostalgia, they've got an impressive selection, great deals, and a friendly staff ready to help. Stop by and level up at Game Over Video Games and More. This episode is brought to you by Alien Treats. Ever wondered what it's like to have a milkshake that's out of this world? Welcome to Alien Treats, Kingsland's one-of-a-kind alien-themed ice cream and candy shop. Whether you're craving a cosmic milkshake, want to cruise our huge selection of freeze-dried candy, or just chill in their free arcade, they've got something for the whole family. Have a birthday party or event coming up? They have a new party room you can rent by the hour that's perfect to make every special occasion memorable. So, if you're looking for a fun, family-friendly experience that's anything but ordinary, beam yourselves over to Alien Treats in Kingsland, Georgia. Follow them on Facebook for the latest specials and events, and remember, at Alien Treats, every bite is an adventure. Alien Treats, where our treats are out of this world.